Hey everyone, and welcome to Tabletop Obscura presents Rage of Elements. Now, I know to start with we got the remaster stuff on there, because in order to talk about Rage of Elements, we also have to talk about the remaster stuff, so we're probably going to be starting off a little bit by talking about the remaster stuff. But, before all of that begins, one, how is everyone? I hope everyone is feeling good and feeling great. Otherwise, I have a stream tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Let's build a super dungeon. I'm going to be super tired for it, but it should be fantastic otherwise. Beyond that, if you are interested in Rage of Elements, it is available at Paizo.com right now. But if you're wanting to pre-order or get a physical copy, let me just put the thing in. You can go to Imaginary Adventures, which is a great Australian retailer who does a lot of the physical products for tabletop role-playing games, including Pathfinder 2nd Edition and D&D. And if you use the code Obscura Tabletop at checkout, you will get a 50% discount off your first purchase. And I will point out, they're not sponsoring the stream or anything like that. I just kind of sent Damien a question. It was like, hey, can I get it like a discount code? He's like, yeah, sure, go for it. But yeah, otherwise, I feel like I should probably introduce my guest. Hey Dan, you there?
Oh my god, are we live, Matt? Are
Yeah,
we
we're
live? This is my first time streaming. I'm so scared. I'm so nervous. Oh my god.
Now,
no, it's fine. I have done radio before. I am not nervous.
You not nervous?
I'm not nervous. This is my jam. Pathfinder's my jam, so.
Well, Pathfinder is kind of a jam. I like it.
Yeah, exactly.
There's a reason I talk about it so often.
I know, right? It's like we talk about it almost on the daily.
Right. But yes, for those who are not aware, Dan here is also known as DanTalksGames. He's over on Twitter. Has been known for getting a little spicy at time to time, shall we say?
I do it. How do I say this? I don't mean to get spicy. It just happens.
It just happens accidentally.
I'm just trying to get discussion going and talk about things I'm passionate about, and it just gets a little spicy sometimes. A little bit of chili to it.
But yeah, feel free to follow him on Twitter. But as a bit of a thing, he also works with me and Sinclair's. He has been helping us out in the tail end of things with some of the design decisions, and also has been writing some of the NPC entries for us.
Yeah, I think this is the first sort of official word of this happening. So, yeah, this is breaking news, I guess.
That's fine. It'll stay between you and me. Wait.
Yeah, exactly.
This is going to YouTube, isn't it? Well,
Nats. Yeah, no, but I will just say too, like, not to shill you publicly on stream, but like, it has been like a great experience working with the Sinclair's team. This is sort of my first real publishing work with any sort of like, well, any TTRPG product in general, but third party as well. So like, I've seen a lot of the stuff that's going on behind the scenes, and like, I cannot rate it highly enough. I'm very excited for people to see the final products when both the Almanac and the Codex come out. It's going to be exciting.
Holy shit, so am I. I mean, most of my work is done on the Almanac, and most of my work is done on the Codex. So it's just, it's a case of I'm just sitting here being like, can it come out yet? Can it come out yet? I want to start talking about this stuff.
I'm very excited. I think my favorite thing about it is the fact that I do these entries for characters that I sort of think in my head, and then we get an artist to actually do art for the characters. That has been like by far my favorite thing of it, seeing these characters actualized in print form.
Like, we've got a couple of character images on Twitter and other social media places, and the reaction has always been so good, and it's like, this isn't even like a quarter of the art we're packing into any of these books.
Yeah, the ones I've seen for the characters I've done, like, I can't talk about them yet because we haven't had any of them released, but like, I'm so excited. Like, they are just, it's beautiful art, and I'm just so excited for people to see it. I'm really so excited.
But with that kind of aside, hey Dan, why don't you tell us a little bit about your history with the hobby with tabletop role-playing games in general? Because
With
I know you
tabletop-
discuss, I know you discuss Pathfinder 2 a lot, but I don't think people kind of know the full context for it.
No, and I think the thing I sort of need to preface before everything in many ways is that TTRPGs aren't really sort of like my original like go-to gaming hobby. Like I've always been very big into the digital side of things. But for the most of it, like it was about 10 years ago now. Like as I was saying with you earlier today, we were discussing it before the show, and I was saying that it's been 10 years ago that I was first introduced to the wonderful world of tabletop gaming. My first my first game I played was not D&D, believe it or not. It was actually the Dragon Age role-playing game. I don't think I've even mentioned that to you before. Like,
I don't think so.
No, because like I had a friend. Like, I wanted to get into like, back then I saw it as like D&D-like games because I didn't know what the TTRPG abbreviation was.
Yeah.
And me and some friends were big into Dragon Age at the time, and they just released sort of the first supplement for the role-playing game. So one of my friends was very lovely, and she was like, okay, I'm going to run a Dragon Age role-playing game. You want to come play with us? And I'm like, yeah, sure. So my very first proper role-playing game character was a city elf warrior in the Dragon Age role-playing game. That lasted about 2 sessions. Before that sort of fell apart. Well, I say fell apart. It was fine. Like it was good fun, but it was sort of just didn't catch us. But my first sort of real dive was I did a literally within the same year, a few months after that. One of my other friends who had been a long time like Dungeons and Dragons player by that point. He was getting a group together, and he was sort of it was a bit of a mega group, really. Like it started off with like I think 5 people, maybe 6.
God.
Then it got to 8 people by the time of like the second session.
Yeah.
And then, yep.
Just too many players, not enough GMs.
Oh, well, here's what happened. We ended up getting a second GM, and then while at a party with basically like because we were all friends, so I was at a party with them. He got 2 more people involved after that. So by the end of it, it was like a 10-person 2GM or 10-player 2GM party. Like, it basically fell apart because the scheduling became a nightmare.
Yeah, no,
but like, oh my god, like I cannot chill. Shout out to my original GM Angus, who was like he was an absolutely amazing game master for like that my first proper D&D experience.
Yeah.
So this is 3.5, by the way. So this was like back on like the cusp, the tail end of like the pre-5e era. So I got a little taste of that before we sort of transitioned into the 5e era. But yeah, like the first D&D campaign, like it was very sort of like one of those campaigns you play where they just completely immerse you in the role. Like we start off in like a very sort of like typical, like, oh, you guys are locked in prison because you guys got involved in a bar fight. You guys have to escape. And then within like the first 10 minutes, like the town gets invaded by what could only be described as like Burton-esque horrors. Yeah, basically. So like it's the main antagonist was literally like a child, like literally ripped straight from like, I don't know if you know the Black-Eyed Children creepypasta, but like
that sounds familiar.
Yeah, like that was basically like the main antagonist was basically like a child that was like who was like an eldritch god sort of thing.
Okay.
And like it was that sort of like, and like by the end of the first session, like the entire starting town had been sucked up into a void. And we were like, oh my god, like we have everything. We have plot hooks, we have tension, we have stakes, we have a direction to go. Like, so that whole campaign lasted about 10, 12 sessions or something like that.
That's not bad.
But like, it was good. And like for the size of the group, it was amazing we were able to coordinate it that well. But like, it was such an amazing campaign. And I can't, like, it's one of those ones that just really sticks with you.
Yeah.
Like, even like 10 years on, like it's still like one of my absolute favorite campaigns I've ever played in, even though it like fell apart due to a combination of scheduling and just the unwieldiness of managing that size of a group. But yeah, like, so after that, but within like 3 months of me just starting that campaign, I sort of started delving into like all of like the D&D 3.5 like splat books. I got them through very legal means, and as we all do, and basically started going through all the splat. And I was sort of like, because I read the Player's Handbook, of course, but I read all the splat, and I was like, oh my god, this game is amazing. Like, there's
Yeah.
so many customizations options. Like, I was looking at things like prestige classes, you know, before I knew they were shit, and I was going like, like, oh my god, this is like, you've got so many options and ways to like express and customize yourself. And like, of course, like again, like as we've sort of, or as I've gone into before, like D&D 3.5 is like a mess of a system, but like when you sort of got that fresh coat of paint on it, it's such a wonderful new experience.
Yeah, and I think we've all had that experience, especially from like the 3.5 days of finding this really great like third-party product that's like it has so many great ideas and has evocative imagery and everything else like that, and you bring it to your GM, and the GM says no.
Yeah, but even then, it was like the splat. Like I vividly remember, like I think it was I can't remember which source book it was, but I vividly remember like seeing like there was like it was like an alien mage prestige class or something. Like I can't remember what it was called, but it was a 3.5 prestige class that was basically like you could take an arcane caster and like basically turn them into like an eldritch abomination that would summon eldritch abominations.
That does sound like cool, actually.
And that was just like such a vivid memory because it's just like one of those ideas that's so evocative. And I was like, those are the sorts of ideas that really got me going. This is like what I can do with this sort of format.
Yeah.
Because so within like 3 months, I'd already sort of arranged my first campaign, and like I decided it was funnily enough, it was a pirate campaign, ironically. Very suitable based on what you're doing at the moment.
I mean, look, hoist the colors and everything else like that. But pirate campaigns do work really well. I mean, it gives all the players a good way to kind of come together, has a reason for them to adventure together. But yeah, continue.
But the reason I did it was because like I was reading, there was a supplement, a D&D 3.5 supplement called Stormrack, which was all about like naval combat and naval adventures and all that sort of thing. And it was like, it just stood out to me. I'm like, yeah, I could do something really fun with this idea. So I ended up inviting like the two GMs from the campaign that I was running as sort of because like they were playing characters in that campaign who were pirates. So we just transposed them into my campaign. And then like I invited two other friends, and like, yeah, like within days, within like the first few months of me playing D&D, I was already arranging my own campaigns I was running. And like, that was it. After that, it's like, because my background is writing before anything else. Like I've got a generalist creative background, but writing's always been like the big, and that sort of storytelling's always been the big passion. And sort of realizing I can run games while also telling the kinds of stories I want to tell.
Yeah.
I just realized this was like the perfect medium for me to express myself. And that's the other thing too. The other thing I really liked about D&D, like it was like that, tactical grid-based combat. Because like I was a big fan of like games like Final Fantasy Tactics and things like that growing up. Yeah. Advanced, I should say. I'm a heathen. All the War of the Lions fans are going to come down on me for that. But I didn't own a.
I preferred Final Fantasy Tactics Advanced as well.
I didn't say I preferred it. I just never played the original because I didn't have a PS1. I don't even remember if it was released here in Australia.
I think it was an emulated version that
Oh, naughty.
I got through super legal means, but that's also
we do completely legal things on this channel.
Absolutely. We do not condone any criminal activities whatsoever.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I'm a big fan of the Final Fantasy Tactics series as well.
Yeah, so like those sorts of games, and like, it was just a natural fit for me. Like I was just like, yeah, this is great. It's the exact kind of gameplay I want from my combat. It's got all the role play. It's got the potential for me to tell the kind of stories I want to play, or want to tell. So it sort of all fit like a glove. And then at the end of the first year of me running D&D, this is where the Pathfinder comes into it, because I'd heard of Pathfinder by peripheral at that point.
Yeah.
But I didn't know anything about it until like I went to a local game store. I still remember it. It was like there was like a small games shop at a Carindale shopping centre here in Brisbane that I walked into, and I saw it on the core rulebook for first edition on the shelf. And I was sort of like, oh, what's this deal? And one of my friends had said to me previously, oh, it's like a 3.5 knockoff. Like, they basically continued publishing after D&D went to 4th edition. And I was like, okay, so I wonder if it's any good. And then I'm, like, flipping through. And, like, the first class I check is Paladin, because that's my sort of go-to class in most RPGs when I start off. Yeah. And I was looking at it being like, oh my god, like, the Smite Evil's actually good in this system. It's actually good, and like they had like more customization. I was looking through the fighter, and I was like, oh my god, you can actually like customize weapons in this. You can actually specialize in a specific weapon style. And again, this was me not knowing any better that, the entire, institution of 3.5 is drenched in ivory tower and marshals are crap in that system. But at the time, it was absolutely like, this is what I wanted to play. So and then I've started looking through all the other Splat and realizing I just legitimately think that I'm not just saying this to shill Pathfinder because we're shilling 2E at the moment, but I legitimately think the first edition Pathfinder Splat was a lot better than the WotC Splat. It was just much better thought of. They had the focus on archetypes rather than prestige classes. The base classes they had were just more unique and fleshed out and actually added things to the game rather than just sort of being there for the sake of them. So I loved, running that system. I loved playing it. It was great at the time. And, but you kind of get to that point. I got to that point, I think it was 2 or 3 years down the road. Just after, it was about a year or two after 5th edition came out. I was still running Pathfinder because I was I'm not going to switch to 5th edition yet. It's got promise, but I'm still enjoying the girth that Pathfinder has.
Yeah.
But then you sort of get to that point where you get to level 10 in your campaign and you're this game's getting really unwieldy. It is getting, I too remember picking up the peer from saying they fixed the problem with X. Yeah, it obviously it was still drenched in the problems with with D&D 3.5, but and I could see Paizo really trying hard to rail against that to create a balanced system. And I stand by that. The Gishes in that system were some of the most fun I've had playing in TTRPG. They were just really well designed classes.
As soon as the Arcanist came out, that was it. That was what I played in Pathfinder 1.
Yeah, well, I mean, Arcanist was quite literally the one, that was the straw that broke the camel's back. That's the one that's just this is just it was the original Neo-Vancian caster. It just broke the game open. Oh yeah, grapple flow charts. Oh yeah, that's exactly it. And that's it. And that's the thing, I got into 5th edition after,
You keep talking, I'll see if I can find it.
Find the grapple flow chart, yeah, exactly. But I was just going to say, because, that's the thing, though, the problem with, 3.51e is that it is such a dense system, but so many of those systems are just so tedious and, not worth it. It's you could learn how the grapple flow chart works and make a character that's good at grappling, or you could just make a 4-arm blood rager like I had to deal with for 2.5 years and just go ham on everything and kill them really quickly. There's no middle ground there. It just had no semblance of nuance to any of the system. So it was such a dense system with so many redundant systems that you would never use. So that turned me off crunchy games for a bit, and I think that's why 5e, as much as I'm critical of it these days, I think it was necessary and a nice palate cleanser at that point in my TTRPG career, because you need after dealing with a system like 3.51e for so long, you kind of get tired of the tedium. Doesn't really go anywhere. So 5th edition, I started playing, I think it was about 2 years into its lifespan, and in hindsight, I don't think there it is. Oh, I'm getting numb flashbacks just thinking about it. Oh my god.
This is from, I believe this is from the Pathfinder Society prep.com. So this was the resource center they had for people who are running Pathfinder 1 at Society.
See,
it's fine. It's all one page.
This is not worth it. Oh my god, this is... I hate it. I hate it so much.
Now, I should be clear to anyone who's kind of new to 3.5 or Pathfinder, that Pathfinder, this version of grapple, is an improvement on the 3.5 version.
Oh yeah, this was an upgrade from 3.5.
This was an upgrade. I've seen the 3.5 grapple charts and...
Yeah, combat maneuver bonus and combat maneuver defense. That was I was looking at that being oh damn, that's revolutionary.
Yeah.
Oh no. Oh, but this is what I mean. It's just such an obtuse, it's just an obtuse subsystem that was so meaningless. It was basically a gimmick build if you ever made a grappler.
Yeah.
Like you had some great like copy passes and things like that for jank builds in 3.5 and things like that. Like I can't remember, it was the orc luchador wrestler that like suplexed a dragon or something.
Yeah.
But like it's yeah. Like for most people, like I can absolutely see why like systems like 3.5 were like just such lockout for the average audience for so long.
Well, I'll say as someone who ran Pathfinder 1 for the entirety of its lifespan.
Mm.
The highest I ever got a campaign, I think, was to level 10.
Mm.
Just because after that point, things got too unwieldy. I
Yeah.
had a power gamer in one of my groups that was a regular for a while.
Yeah.
And just the kind of mass and stuff that they pull at, it was just like, no. Like,
Yeah.
They poked me the other day and was like, hey, maybe you should just do a Pathfinder 1 campaign, just a short one. I'll make a character for it. And it's like, no. I'm sorry. You can't make me go back to Pathfinder 1.
Yeah, like I will make it clear. I have extremely fond memories of my time running
likewise.
3.5 on 1E, and like at the time it was like definitely what I wanted to play, but it's that whole thing of like in hindsight, like particularly with how the development of these systems have come along within the past few years.
Yeah.
Like you just see the improvements. Like this stuff is like not elegant. Like
No.
you want a deep system, but this is this is too much.
This is a level of crunch that people just do not engage with anymore.
Yeah, this is like masochism levels of engaging in crunch. It's like you do this if like the standard level of crunch for the average person, like you get the people like us who are like fine level of crunch 2E has, and then you like get the one guy who's like, this isn't enough. I need to go deeper.
And they find
I need this to be needlessly complicated, extremely gimmicky, and still weaker than just casting a spell.
Yeah, and they find systems like GURPS or it wasn't Everspace, it was something else, Hyperspace or something like that had charts for everything. And there's Anima as well. Like those systems exist. But to kind of get us back on track, 5e and you.
Yeah, absolutely. So 5e was a bit of a slow burn because, like I said, I was sort of still transitioning from that sort of tail end of my 1e experience from that. And I will say at the time too, I ended up being a player in a campaign that my brother was running, and it's still running. We're actually like literally like 2 sessions away from like the end of that campaign. Like we've got 1 session on Saturday, and like after that is going to be the grand finale. It's like we've been at this for a couple of years now. Between like COVID and other commitments, it's taken that long. So, and that will be like my first proper like full-length campaign complete. But But yeah, like 5th edition was like, I like I said before, it's like a palate cleanser. I think it needed to happen to sort of cleanse me from how dense 1st edition was. D&D 5th edition. I get my numbers mixed up. 3.5 1E was.
Yeah.
So, and like I don't want to like knock it because like at the time it was very much the same sort of thing as like when I started playing 3.5 1E. It was like, okay, this is a fresh new edition, like it's got some new ideas, I'm going to take some time to adapt to them, it's going to be a different game. And there are legitimately, like for all the crap I like heap on 5e on Twitter and everywhere else, there are some legitimately good ideas within 5th edition. The thing is,
absolutely.
And the biggest problem with 5th edition is the fact that it is exactly the same on its 3.5 1E in a different way, which is the system promises something and then fails to deliver on it once you sort of get in too deep with it. Like it promises a system that is much easier to play and much easier to run, but the easier to play part is not entirely wrong, but the oppressiveness of 5th edition was something that I think in hindsight was always there when I was running games of it. I didn't hate it. I was sort of able to go, oh yeah, like I'm able to make this work and all that. But I never felt like I was enjoying myself as much as I did when I was running 3.5 1E. And I think that's because it was a system that put so much on the game master to make that mechanical side of it work.
Yeah.
So I sort of ran like a few smaller sessions and smaller campaigns and things like that, and I was enjoying it. And then Pathfinder 2nd edition got announced, and by that point I'd sort of gone, oh yeah, like I'm not really in the mood for like a crunchy system again. I won't have time, all that sort of thing. But I'll eye it because like I love 1st edition. I'll be curious to see what they do with 2nd edition. And second edition was very much like I was like cautiously optimistic with it.
Yeah.
Like I saw a lot of like the playtest material and things like that, and I was like, okay, this has actually got some meat to it, but I'm gonna have to wait to the final product to see how it goes. And like I will say too, like I've said this before, love Paizo to death. Their marketing for a lot of things is just. They were not selling me on it with like all the blogs and things like that. Like they sort of like gave you snippets of like feats and things like that without any context. So I was kind of reading it being like, why do I care that like a druid can cast like infinite level 5 or lower spell slots at level 20? Like what's like that's cool, but like where's the fun stuff? What is actually the meat here? What am I trying to do here? Like where's the customization that you guys are promising me? And then it came out. And again, like whenever I start a new system, like I would never like just commit to a whole campaign. I would absolutely be like, let's just do a small one. Let's just do like a one shot or like a small module or something. And I started running it, and like within like the first session, I was just like, Paizo Monkey thought Space Goblin's going to be the mascot when they had Skinamanders.
Well, funny you mentioned that.
Yeah.
So they recently announced. We'll get into more of this in a little bit, but
we'll get into that.
They announced Pathfinder 2.
Yeah.
And the mascot they're using for all their field test material that they're calling is in fact a Skittermander.
Yeah, Commander Concierge.
Yes.
I am very look, I will say like Paizo is very good at marketing with cute little critters. So
yes.
Yeah, like goblins. Like everyone, I remember when goblins were first announced as a core race in second edition, and people were like, "Oh, why are they doing that?" And I'm just like, why not? Like goblins in Pathfinder are like the best goblins in like in like fantasy I've seen.
Like talking about the Baldur's Gate 3 recently out, and I'd said to like someone said I want to play a goblin, but I don't want to play a Faerun goblin. I want to play a Galarian goblin.
Yeah, look, someone's already. I'm sure someone's already made that mod. So
I've
and if they're not,
it's being worked on.
It's being worked on, of course it is.
Yeah.
I'm sure someone's doing like, I bet you someone is doing like a full like Pathfinder 2nd edition conversion for that already. Someone is like going to like, you know, mod the hell out of that game to just be like, 3.5. Let's turn it into a system that isn't 5th edition and it's basically just Pathfinder 2nd edition.
Well, someone already has an action economy modifier.
Yeah.
Mod, it's already available on Nexus mod, and it's like, oh, that's tempting, but I promised myself a vanilla run through first.
Yeah, of course it is. Yeah. Anyway, so I'll wrap up like my stuff so we can sort of get onto what everyone is actually here for. So like, yeah. So my love of 2nd edition was very much like a slow burn as well, because like I kind of like was tentatively like, oh, like let's I'll do a couple of one shots and see how it goes. And like the thing that really did stand out to me was just how accurate the encounter building was.
Yeah.
Like, that was the big thing. And I think every game master who runs Pathfinder 2nd edition, particularly if they're like me and you run your own campaigns, like, there is nothing that is more beautiful than, like, an encounter budget system that actually works. Like, it was so like... good. It was like eating, like, cave worms all your life, and then you, like, eat a beautiful steak, and it's like, this is what I've been waiting for. Like, it is such a well-designed system, and I think that's what I came to appreciate about it. Like, after I realized, hey, this actually works, and then like I'm reading all the stuff online, it's like, I can't break this game. Like, I can't power game it. What's going on? I can't figure it out. And I'm sort of like going like, oh my god, have they done it? Have they made the unbreakable game?
Look, there are ways to break it, and there were some early on, there were some ways to kind of cheese some things, but power gaming to the level you go with like 3.5 or PF1 or even 5e, you just it's not possible. And really I as a GM kind of love that.
Yeah, and I think the thing for me too, like, because as a player, like the thing, because obviously as a game master, like I love the system. It is so robust. It is so incredibly detailed, and it's kind of all that. It's the exact opposite of like that stuff I was saying with 3.51e before. There's a lot of content in it, but every piece of content actually matters. It's like 90% like meat, like 10% gristle. Like, there's still going to be like a few things you go, okay, I don't really need to use that, or this archetype's a little bit kind of flavorful, but not really that useful. But like, compared to 3.51e, like, and even 5th edition, it's a game that is so perfectly engineered to just streamline a lot of that stuff, that tedium of actually like trying to like rock out your power levels and things like that. It just sort of works.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was like as a GM, like that's great for GMs, but the reason I love that as a player is because it allows you to be more expressive with your builds without having to worry about power gaming.
Yes.
Like a lot of the min-maxing is baked in innately with things like key ability score and all that. But the other thing about it is that because the divide between like the heavily optimized builds and like the flavor builds is like very minimal, and most classes have what they absolutely need to function as a baseline, you can be a bit more expressive and kind of like have, we got the party fighter who's going like full blown, like I've got all my two-handed weapons, I'm gonna be knocking down everything and dealing tons of damage. I'm gonna be the swashbuckler and I'm gonna take the dandy archetype and you know I'm just gonna be be foppish and crash parties and things like that. But I'll still be able to do well in combat with my skill styles, my style skills and finishes and things like that. So like, you could optimize it to be better in combat, but like in the end, there's such a the divide is no longer a gulch. It's more like a couple of steps, and that makes it much better.
Like, you'll always find people who are like, okay, I'm playing a fighter, so I'm gonna have the background of farmhand, so I get assurance with athletics. But it's not on the same level. And I get it all the time. I'll have players who pick the weirdest backgrounds they possibly can, and it's just like, okay, let's roll with this. And I love it.
And it's great, but it's like it's so much easier to make like a flavorful expression build that's like, if I like want to make a character concept that like, just the other day I was going through and like my next character I really want to do for Pathfinder Society is a psychic, because like psychic is one of like my favorite classes in the game at the moment.
Yeah.
And like, I can make like a full telekinetic psychic that doesn't take any of like the obviously overpowered stuff that you can do with it, but still have it be like extremely viable and have its own niche within the party. And that's really where like the genius of the system lies. Like you don't have to be necessarily power gaming, because the game is not designed to let any single player carry the party in that way.
Yeah.
So like everyone needs to sort of have their role, and everyone needs to figure out, how am I contributing? It's all about teamwork, all that sort of stuff. And really, that's what I want to see, like both as a player and when I'm running a game. I want my party members to be working together. I don't want them to be off on their own, doing their own thing, and like, being like unstoppable one-man islands that could probably solo the campaign if they wanted to, and are just tearing through my content. So,
which it's something that I experienced a lot with Pathfinder 1, where you'd have that one character in the party was done up by the power gamer, and their power level is so much higher than everyone else's, and it's just not a great feel, really. It
really isn't. And really, like, the thing I've sort of realized with like a lot of the discussions I've had around Pathfinder 2nd edition is that a lot of the people who are very not happy with the game are the kinds of people who can't have fun unless they're doing that. And the problem with that is that that's a generalization, I should say. Like, obviously that's not the case for everyone. Other people have other reasons they may not like the system. But like, there are a lot of like the hardcore power gamers don't like Pathfinder 2nd edition because it's an innately capped system. But that's kind of the point, because that kind of stuff becomes insufferable to deal with if you are not that player at the table. Like, both as the GM and as the other players, you don't want to have that disparate power level, because it just kind of feels bad then. Like, you like as the players, you kind of feel like you're not really a team. You're kind of just, it's a one-man show and you guys are just the side pieces. And then as a GM, it becomes impossible to balance, because you have this one unstoppable character that you can't, like, there's a lot of talk. I remember around then there was a lot of talk about like how to balance parties when you got that one really super powerful power game character. And it's like, the reality is you can't. Like, you just can't.
No, I do remember reading some of those early like Reddit and forum posts where I was like, I have a singular power gamer in my group. How do I make this more fun for everyone else? And they were just kind of like, get these one enemies in every single one of your encounters for that one, and just have them do one-on-one. And it's like, all right.
And the funny thing is, like, in my experience, whenever I went out of my way to counter the power gaming player, like, it'll let everyone else at the table shine. But then that power gamer is getting really frustrated, because it's like, oh, now I'm having a bad time because the GM's gone out of the way to scupper me to give everyone else a chance. And like, no one really has fun in that sort of situation.
And you end up with a tired and burnout GM.
Yeah, and I think, and that's something like, obviously that's a sort of, apropos of anything we're talking about tonight, but one of my big through lines when I talk about a lot of my gaming stuff is, I think there's a lot of, I don't know if disrespect is the right word, but there's a lack of awareness to how GM burnout is contributed to via things like that, via like poorly balanced systems, via having to deal with that sort of, or a lot of that mechanical back-end stuff that's just really obtuse.
Yeah.
Like, the big apologia I'd always see from players for 3.5 and 1E was that, oh, like, you don't have to play an overpowered character. Like, you can just all mutually decide at the table to just play a more toned-down game. And it's like, yeah, you can absolutely do that, but, like, it takes so much effort to monitor. Like, the players have to be constantly checking themselves to make sure that they're not going overpowered. The GMs, always, worrying about, like, oh, if that one player does overstep the bound. And this also implies that, like, everyone at the table is being honest about it, because, like, I've played with some pretty shady people in my life. Like, like, there are some people, there are some people that, like, would just be like, oh yeah, I'm not going to power game, and then, like, they'd, like, try to get you to give an inch so they could take a mile every single time they made a new, like, had to level up and, like, make a new choice.
I could tell some stories of some of the problematic players I have had in my groups, and I'm just glad I'm kind of beyond that now.
It really is. I've sort of weeded out all of, like, the real problem characters in my regular gaming circles, and now I'm left with wonderful people. Like, so for anything I complain about in regards to, like, whether it's 5th edition or, like, even, like, talking about, like, my own experiences gaming and things like that, very little of it is my current gaming tables. A lot of it is sort of past experience that I've sort of had to learn to sort of manage. So yeah, it's it's one of those things that I think a lot of people, like, in the end, these are social experiences.
Yes.
In the end, these are very social experiences. And while you want to have fun with the game and you want to tell a great story and you want to have that sort of in-story interaction, in the end, you are dealing with people behind the table. It's what I always say. Like, whenever there's a problem at the table, it's rarely about the game itself. There's people behind the characters that are actually doing that. When you get that guy who's like, oh, it's what my character would do. It's like, well, no, actually, it's not. It's what you're doing. Like, and it doesn't matter if that's what your character would do. It's upsetting the person or ruining the fun of the people at the table. You don't get to use that as an excuse. Like, you have to be cognizant of trying to make sure everyone is having as good a time as possible, within reason, of course.
Oh yeah. And this is why there's been such a push recently I say recently, but it's been like the last 5 years or so, of safety tools and session zeros and everything else like that, which I have loved. I'm not always great at session zeros, but I still try to have them whenever possible.
Oh, absolutely. And I will say too, like, I'm very big on, like, I'll have some themes in my campaigns that are, like, very heavy. Like, I'm playing, like, a gothic horror campaign at the moment in one of my regular 2E groups, and, like, there's vampires. Like, they're doing horrible things to people. Like, but I go, every time there's, like, anything slightly dodgy, I go, or, like, that's going to be a bit heavy, I go to my players, are you going to be okay with this?
Yeah.
And they will be okay with it, because that's the kind of players they are. But it's good. I feel it's a mark of respect for me as a GM to make sure they are having a good time with that, and that for the purposes of storytelling, I'm not making them uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's also practice for the one time you have a player who isn't.
Absolutely, and that's just it. And thankfully, that's rare these days for me.
And sometimes it could just be out of left field. It's happened to me a couple of times where someone has just been like, hey, so I know we didn't really discuss this beforehand, but that one particular subject you touched on was kind of, can we not go back there? And
yeah, exactly.
I've immediately added it to the list. And this is why the safety tools and everything else like that were good.
Exactly. But yeah, I think it's interesting though, because there is definitely a lot of focus on, like, that social element. But I think in terms of, like, in terms of making things accessible to players and making sure GMs don't burn out as well, I think you gotta think about the game itself and the kind of experience that your particular system you're running is delivering. Yeah. And that's something I think, like, again, that's why I really enjoy 2nd edition, because yeah, like, it's not going to be for everyone, but for the kind of games I run, which is that sort of crunchy tactical combat with a lot of storytelling around it, you want to make sure, like, I want to make sure that the game itself is insulated from a lot of those issues that could crop up at the table as a result of, power imbalances or systems that just don't work, or like even me as a GM, just making sure that the tools I'm presenting are accurate and delivering the exact experience I want to deliver to my players. A lot of the time that means encounter building, but that can be anything from role playing to item distribution to how skill checks work and things like that. So you want to make sure you have all those tools.
And look, I mean, Pathfinder 2 does that. But
absolutely.
All that said,
let's stop talking about me. Let's talk about what we're really here to talk about.
Well, Jarrett does bring up a good point. Every now and again, you'll do a session 0 and you'll have all the players go, I'm fine with anything but the standard bads, and it's like, okay, but what are the standard bads?
Yeah, like, don't assume anything. As they say, don't, you assume you make an ass of you and me, so...
Yeah, if you're not comfortable speaking about it in, like, a group setting, feel free to just personally message me, or we can set up an anonymous thing, but yeah.
Absolutely.
We're going to be talking about Rage of Elements, but Rage of Elements covers new ground, shall we say, with the remaster. So before we could really get onto like discussing the mechanics and some of the things you change with Rage of Elements, we do have to kind of talk about the remaster. Yeah. And something I noticed, I'm not sure if this is a mistake or not, but the player core has Mark Seifter as one of the writers for it.
I reckon that's a legacy thing, because, I mean, let's be frank, like, I'm going to be frank, I'm going to sim for Mark Seifter a bit.
No, that's fine.
He is, like, I cannot, like, Mark Seifter is a huge part of the reason why 2E is such a robust game system. He is, like, because for people who don't know, he is, like, I think it's, like, MIT graduated masters in, like, computer science.
Yeah.
Like, he's a freaking genius. Like, it's because of him the maths is so robust and tight in this system. I think it would be a disservice if they didn't put him on player core, like, even though he's no longer a part of Paizo. Like, he deserves to be on that front cover.
He does. And a lot of the mechanics that we see and we love about Pathfinder 2 were his responsibility. So,
yeah, absolutely.
He might have been a freelance. They might have brought him on as a freelancer for it, but I guess we won't know until it's actually out.
Yeah, I mean, he did do a review of some of the remaster changes on Roll for Combat the other day, and he did seem genuinely surprised by like some of the stuff that was in here. But like some of it was like he explained a lot of the thought processes and understood a lot was going on. But there was like one or two changes. He was like, I actually don't know why they did that. So it's very possible he has had no involvement with remaster.
No,
but but in the end, like, I mean, in the end, Pathfinder is like a multi. Obviously, there's many fingers in the pie on that one.
Oh,
so
God,
obviously, yeah.
Like any book like this has a team of like 50. Once it's all said and done, between freelancers, artists, writers, editors, everything else.
And it really is amazing because like they would have gotten this rushed basically after all the OGL stuff, like right at the start of the year. So, like, it's amazing they've been able to, like, get this one book out ready in time for end of year.
Because when is it supposed to be coming out? Do we know?
I think it's in November.
November? All right.
I feel it's November. That's what I remember on the Paizo shop page, but yeah.
I kept on thinking October, but I'm pretty sure that's the T and Jia books.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Unless I'm completely off again, which is possible. It's hard to keep up sometimes.
Very possible.
But yeah, I just thought it was interesting that Mark Seifter was still on the front cover. Because it might just be an honor thing, because he was responsible for the original core system. But
yeah.
So player core, GM core, they're splitting up. See, I feel like they're learning all the right lessons from 5e. Because the original core rulebook for Pathfinder 2nd Edition is very dense, kind of hard to manage. It contains pretty much everything you need, but more than what players need.
Yeah, exactly. No, it's pretty smart, to be honest. I think it's sort of like that whole trade-off thing. Like, yes, it's nice to have everything all in the one book for when you're starting off, but it can get overwhelming.
Yeah. And I'm glad that they're splitting up, and they're mashing a couple of the books together and then splitting up into 4. So was it player core 1, player core 2, then GM core 1 and GM core 2?
No, it's not GM core 1 and 2. It's GM core and then monster core.
Okay, well there you go.
Yeah.
How big is the monster core going to be though?
Yeah, that one's probably going to be pretty huge. I think it's like 400 monsters or something.
Yeah, Jared says, I find the CRB hard to read due to how large the book is. It's massive. And
Yeah.
I'll be honest,
look,
I haven't read
yeah.
it cover to cover. I probably never will.
Yeah. Yeah, look, I'm going to be frank too. Like, I'm one of those heathen new age, like, TTRPG players that, like, uses all of the digital resources. So, like, I don't have any physical books apart from, like, my limited edition, my collector's edition core rulebook. Everything else is PDF. I just buy PDFs. I don't have room on my shelf for physical books anymore, and it's just easier. And then I use Archives of Nethys.
Yeah, I use Archives of Nethys. I'm not sure if KO is actually in the chat at the moment, but they're from Archives of Nethys, and they tend to just hang out every now and again when they're doing late night work. But Archives of Nethys is really good. I tend to have the books on hand, but that's sometimes when I'm trying to like really study up on something. I'll have 3 or 4 books open in front of me, and that's just something I can't do digitally.
Yeah, and I will say too, like, I think a big part of it for me is the fact that, like, as I said, my background is digital games, so like I'm used to MMOs and, you know, other digital RPGs. So, like, it's just very intuitive for me to look at to use a site like Archives of Nethys or Easy Tools or something like that, and systems like Path Builder to just look up things and, like, have everything sort of run through hyperlinks and all that sort of thing. So,
man, this is the comparison they have between the 2 books.
Yeah, so, can I say this is beautiful? Like, just the change. It's like, like, I know so many people, because I was never I know so many people who are like, oh, the core rulebook was so unwieldy, and I'm just like, oh, look, I mean, it's not great, but it's not unreadable, and it isn't. I literally read the Mage the Ascension D20 book the other week. Like, don't tell me that Pathfinder is unwieldy by comparison. But just looking at this, you can see, like, the checks page compared to the new one compared to the original. It is just the form, like, whoever did the formatting needs a raise.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's
yes, Seth. World of Darkness books are horrible to read.
They're absolutely horrible to read. The classic ones used to break up the mechanical content with little story snippets and novella type things. I'm not sure if they still do that, but that was what got a lot of people through the original books. But just looking at closer look at the new one, like, even the color changes and everything else makes it easier to read.
The green is so much easier on the eyes.
It really is. It's so much less harsh.
Yeah. And it just fits neatly. It's great. I love it.
And they included one of the most popular things that have come in through the more recent books, and that's the full breakdown on the side there.
Yeah, that's clever.
I know they have the chapter ones here, but in the new one they got like the full thing. So when you are using the book for a reference, it's so much easier to go through.
It's just so much better.
Yeah.
Like, it is really making me wonder, like, did they actually have this, like, already in the works before the OGL stuff, and someone was just like, okay, here's, like, the concept for the formatting, and everyone's like, oh, let's just put this aside for later. And then as soon as they were like, it was like, where'd you put that? Where'd you put that file? We need it right now.
It was actually interesting, because about a year or two back, I think it was 2021 or something like that.
Yeah.
Me and Panzer Gamer, who's also on Twitter, the news came out that Wizards of the Coast were hiring programmers with experience in Unity. And we were like, in about 3 years, Wizards of the Coast is going to be celebrating their 50th anniversary for D&D. Yeah. So we're predicting they're going to have a new VTT, which will be for D&D.
Yeah.
And they're going to have some sort of new edition.
Yeah.
And if publishers are not preparing for that, then they're making a mistake. So I do believe...
we not know at the time.
Right? So I do believe that Paizo would have been at least doing preliminary stuff like 6 months beforehand, at least. Like, this is something they've probably been considering for a little while.
Yeah, I mean, we could talk about the OGL saga all day, but, like, it does definitely, like, the speed at which they've done this, the more I think about it, the more it would make sense if they'd be keeping this one in the back pocket, just to, like, we need to get this one ready. Like, you know, if anything were to happen, like, if Wizards were to, like, pull the plug and be like, right, OGL's gone, you know, give us all your content. Like they'd have to be ready to drop everything they've done and get it all out under a new license. So
I'm sure someone had something on a Google document and they were like, "Ha, my time has come."
yeah, basically. You all thought I was silly for preempting this, but haha! Who knew Wizards of the Coast would be that mustache-twirlingly evil?
Yeah, well. And new Ancestries.
Leshies!
Leshies are becoming core.
I am so excited. I love Leshies.
What were we talking about before? About Paizo and small-sized
Cute
critters?
mascots.
Cute mascots,
Leshies are just,
yeah.
like, Leshies are just... They are really, like, one of the standout ancestries in... That's come out in 2nd edition. They just are such a wonderful concept, and they're so robust in terms of, like, what you can do with them, like, mechanically and thematically. You know, they just... Yeah, and like I just love all the heritages that are all like the various sort of plants. It's just like I just can't believe that this sort of like plant type race has not been like a core like race in D20 games up until now.
It feels like one of those things where it's obvious now that you look at it.
Yeah.
But at the time it was like, like plant creatures, yeah, okay. Like they had Gorons and they had Leshies in Pathfinder 1, but it wasn't until 2nd edition where they really accelerated into the front of everything.
I mean, hell, Leshies fairly early on in the system as well. Like they were like I think one of the first new races, new ancestries, if I remember correctly.
Lost Omen's character guide.
It was, yeah. So it helps that they definitely had a head start on a lot of things, but like, it's definitely they've definitely been one of the standouts, and it makes it's like goblins. Like it makes absolute sense why they'd be added into. Now, the one I'm interested in though, I want to know what's going on with mixed ancestry. Like because obviously they've got your standard half orc there. Are they doing like general mixed ancestries, or are they gonna like, or is this just a thing for like they got half elves and half orcs there? Is this gonna be like a thing that like you can just like do to make half ancestries or mixed ancestries of any combination?
Well, so it's in the core book for Pathfinder 2, but they have this little sidebar that's like it talks about, hey, what if I want like a mixed ancestry with a dwarf or a gnome?
Yeah.
And the sidebar pretty much says, yeah, go for it. Do that thing.
Absolutely.
Get down with your bad self.
And it would really help differentiate Galarian because they're going full like this is our own setting now. We're not doing anything OGL. This like making mixed ancestries like a baseline rather than just having half elves and half orcs as the obvious ones would really go far in differentiating the setting and going now I can do some really crazy shit. Yeah,
I want to see like a Snurf Neblum Durgar coupling.
Yeah, just the weird stuff like that.
Just get fuck wild.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nephilim's also the interesting thing.
Yeah, well, if we scroll down, and I know this because I've seen this document before, shout out to the Magic Sword from the subreddit who has done this, who put together this wonderful document. I have read this document already. If we scroll down, we're going to see, we're going to see Leshies first, which is, Leshies. We love Leshies. We've gone the spiel there.
Beautiful.
Yeah, it's wonderful. And again, look at that formatting. It's a nice formatting.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, orcs being core as well too. Like, I mean, this is sort of like the shout out to the new license as well. Like, just the fact that we are getting the orc license, orcs being core now. It makes all the sense in the world. Nephilim. Here we go. Because
this is kind of where my one of my previous lives or previous existences as a Bible college scholar kind of comes into play here.
I did not know that about you. That's interesting.
Yeah, no, it's not something I'll publicize a lot because it's not my proudest moment, but yeah, no, I was in training to be a pastor. But in particular, historically speaking, the position of Nephilim in biblical work is very, very interesting. And I can't help but think that Avi K over on Twitter, who's one of the senior editors now, I can't help but feel like their influence is in here.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Nephilim has always been, like that's had your sort of biblical origins as sort of like divine humans in a sense.
Yes.
So, and particularly like divine humans that could sort of swing either, either angelic or demonic. So yeah, it's it's an absolute shoo-in in that sense. But I think the thing I find most interesting about this, because obviously, like we see this here, they've sort of consolidated all of the lineages from Aasimar and Tieflings previously into the Nephilim. But the thing that's most interesting, and if we scroll down and look at the feats, every single feat from Aasimar and Tieflings is now accessible to any Nephilim. So you can have like an Angelkin or Lawbringer Nephilim that has like hooves or that has claws and things like that.
Yeah.
And the most interesting one to me is there is actually a feat. I think it's level 5. Like if we, like I said, if we scroll down, there's a page of some more feats.
Here's the actual feats.
Yeah. So, yeah, and what we see is, I think it's level 5. Sign of Many Planes, I think it is. Bloodline manifests the ability to draw power from more planar sources. Choose one Nephilim lineage feat that you do not already possess. You gain that feat and all its benefits, even if you already took a lineage feat. So this not only allows you to do it, and I think they mentioned this in the live stream. This allows you to not just take good aligned traits if you're like an angelic Nephilim. You can do mixed holy and unholy races. So you can have a half angel, half demon, which is, that is, all like the people who want to make their like edgy Mary Sue characters are just frothing now. I know they are. Right. But like it makes sense.
It does.
Like,
no, it really does.
Like, if someone wants to be like that obnoxious chosen one character who's like the child of both worlds, you can do that now.
Yeah. And
like,
I'm looking forward to it.
I'm all for it. Like, it really is. Like, it really is just like such, like, they are being like, it's just those little things. Like, none of this is like game breaking or changing, like, not changing too much as far as like the mechanics go, but like from a flavor perspective, again, it's that sort of ability to express a character that just has these really weird and out there concepts.
Well, it's one of the things that came up when I was playing Baldur's Gate 3. Like, as soon as I got into the character creation, I found it so jarring.
Yeah.
Because it's like, Tiefling, wait, why they, oh, that's right, in this they're just their own ancestors.
Oh, that's right, they're boring. They're boring in this.
Look, they have a lot of subclasses, like they have a lot of their sub-races and stuff like that there.
Oh, that's good at least. I will say, I've not played Baldur's Gate 3 yet, so like, I know I'm being a heathen in that sense, but like, I don't have time, and B, like, it's very much, I just haven't gotten around to it. I really need to get a better computer at some point, but but yeah, what was I going to say about? I was going to say something else about. Oh yeah, that's right. With the bestial manifestation, my favorite thing about the bestial manifestation, and again, sort of talking about the D&D comparisons as well, because bestial manifestation, like, that lets you get claws, head, hooves, all that sort of thing as like natural attacks. Yeah. My favorite thing is that the good aligned Nephilims can get it as well.
Yeah,
but like, it's funny because like they basically had that in the D&D, the one D&D playtest. They had that like race of like Celestials that were like animals.
What were they? Yeah, the animal-headed, and everyone was like, "We get where you're going with this, but why?
It's weird. It's weird, guys." So they're like, "Okay, we'll get rid of it." The world. I'm pretty sure like the line they used was basically akin to "The world is not ready for this yet."
And it's like, no, it's not that we weren't ready for it. It's just.
Why didn't we just get why didn't we just get Aasimar? Jesus, guys. Anyway, but I just find the irony hilarious.
Raise you like a remix. Yeah, right.
Yeah. Alrighty.
Classes chapter.
Classes. Oh yeah. There is some good stuff here. There's some very good stuff.
Oh look, just looking at this, they're mixing in some of the APG stuff.
Which is good, and that we knew that was going to happen. Like, all the class feats are going to be consolidated into the individual classes now. So you're not going to have half in fighter, half in, half of the fighter feats in APG and the other half in core and all that sort of thing. You're not going to have to look at APG to get like warden spells for rangers and things like that. Yeah. So it's all it's all exactly what we expected it to be. It's fairly intuitive. Interesting note to some of the changes, like they've changed, what have they got? They got slam down now instead of knockdown.
Yep.
So, Sleek Reposition as well, which is a great name, by the way. Sounds like a dance move.
But
But,
Reposition
like, that's...
is back.
Yeah, Reposition is back. That's the other thing. Like, they've already...
It's back. It's
basically,
back.
yeah. Like, I'm going to be very curious to see the impact that has on like, the meta, of the strategy meta. Because it's one of those things that, like, you know, it's not going to be game-breaking, but it is going to allow for some things to happen that haven't happened that you wouldn't have been able to do before.
No.
Like, because the game didn't really have... Like, one of the biggest complaints I remember everyone was saying is there's sort of no equivalent to, like, you know, you can't move someone while grappling or something like that.
And now we're going to have reposition. I just hope the sickle has reposition.
Yeah, I kind of hope that, like, I'll be curious to see what they do as far as, like, how that's going to tie into weapon traits as well, because that will be a big deciding factor on how that plays, particularly if you have got, like, things like your 2-weapon fighters and 2-handed weapons, so... Yeah.
Now, someone has mentioned the wizard schools, and I think they're up next.
Wizards are coming,
Cleric.
Yeah, we'll get to wizards. I've got things to say about that, but we got to talk about cleric here for a second, because clerics are eating well tonight. Like, they are eating well in this book.
They're getting a buff, but it's not the buff that I wanted.
What buff did you want, Matt?
Well, they have the cloistered cleric and the war priest.
Yeah.
I wanted another option. Like,
fair. You wanted your inquisitor.
Well, not necessarily inquisitor, just, you know, something that kind of met in the middle. Because we have our cloistered cleric, which is our clothing, and we have our royal priest, which is like the shield and armor. Like, I kind of wanted someone who was more skills based, more, I don't know, I guess investigative.
Yeah, like, I can see that. Like, I could, like, I get the appeal for that, but I also think, like, in many ways, like, cleric is a bit of an odd class to sort of skill monkey around a bit. Like, it feels... Because I think I've had this conversation with you, and I won't deviate too much because I want to focus on this. But, like, I've had conversations about, like, because I love the Inquisitor in first edition. I'd love to see it back in second edition. I don't know how that would look, and the problem with it is that the twofold in that the Inquisitor in first edition was such a versatile class. It didn't really have one set identity. It was incredibly versatile. You could build it as a martial, as a spellcaster, as like a skill monkey. So it didn't really have one identity there. But anytime you try to transpose it to second edition, you're kind of stuck going like, well, what is it? Is it like sort of like a bounded caster, like divine caster? Is it going to be like the investigator or something? Or it is like a skill monkey focus? Is it going to be just a hunt? Like, is the judgment's going to be just like ranger hunts and things like that? It's a very like hard class to figure out where it's going to fit into second edition. So I get why, like, particularly for this, why they would just stick with cleric, just doing what it's already been doing.
Yeah, they're just slight buffs here and there, which I do appreciate.
I think I legitimately think like the cleric is in a much better place. Like so the big ones, of course, are well, the first one is that war priest is just getting more, because as much as like I've always defended war priest. War priest has always had a bit of a hard time in the 2e community. A lot of people are like, I mean, it's great for levels 1 to 10, but then it falls off. But I've always felt that the War Priest, like the thing that a lot of people don't realize about the War Priest is that it's always been viable as far as like, you get what you play it so you can play a very specific kind of character, which is sort of like that frontline supportive character. It's going to be a little bit martially, a little bit tanky, a little bit like spellcasty. It's a true sort of jack of all trades. It can work in the right party composition, but if you need something like the dedicated divine caster or like the dedicated frontliner, it's not going to fit that role, and that's where a lot of people were let down by it.
And like, I think there was a misunderstanding about the War Priest as well. Like, I know a lot of people used it as a frontliner, but I definitely think it was one of those ones that was supposed to be a supplementary frontliner. Like, there's a reason the heal has a one-action version.
Yeah, I mean, the problem with War Priest as well is twofold. The first is that, a bit of history for the playtest, it was added as like a compromise, because originally they were just going to do cloistered clerics as like the main sort of cleric that you could have, and then people said, oh, but I want my armored cleric, and they're like, okay, so we'll add a War Priest back. And I don't know if it was slapdash or if it was just like they did it and like they were sort of trying to figure out how to do that sort of part martial, part caster sort of format in the system. But it was definitely like, not as well designed as what a lot of the later Gishes came out as.
Yeah.
So that was part of the problem. But the other thing too about War Priest is the 1E class. Like, they used the name War Priest, which is a Pathfinder First Edition class that was a martial. It was literally a fighter cleric hybrid.
Yeah.
The paladin in 1E was like the defensive divine martial. The War Priest was the offensive one.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people, there was too much baggage associated with the semantics used there. So that's what led to a lot of people being disappointed by it.
And I definitely get that, because I was one of those people that saw the War Priest and was like, okay, this is the kind of cleric I wanted to play. Because one of my first Pathfinder characters as a player was a cleric, but no martial weapon proficiency meant that I couldn't shield bash. Yeah. Which was kind of core to the entire concept of it. But I do like what they're doing, and yes, I do believe the cleric is eating well, but I wanted to see another doctrine.
You wanted that doctrine, Yeah, look, again, I'm sort of divided, because like I'm one of those people that like I don't think it needs another doctrine, but I know a lot of people are clamoring for it. So if they find the right space, I wouldn't be against them doing that. But I think it was probably the right call to just balance the cleric here with what they've already got, rather than trying to add new stuff to it already. Yeah, but yeah. So the big things with it, War Priest, like with the cleric changes, are War Priest has got a bunch of buffs. So full martial proficiency at level 3. They get master weapon proficiency in their deity's favored weapon at level 19, which is not going to affect most people, but it's kind of nice that they sort of gave it that boost.
It's very fighter-like, isn't it?
It is, and I think for the most of it too, like, it's sort of a good compromise. Like, they had a hard and fast stance previously about saying we're never going to give a full caster master proficiency in weapons, because that would be broken. But obviously they've kind of loosened up a bit, but they've sort of done it at like the highest possible level, the lowest possible level they could, which is like very close to endgame. So that makes a lot of sense that they do that. The other thing with War Priest 2, which I don't think we've got it here, they've mentioned there's going to be a feat that lets them get easier access to heavy armor, which is very good, because it means they can pick that up without having to go champion or sentinel archetype.
Oh, sentinel.
Yeah, I know. There's a lot to unpack there, but we don't have time for that one.
No, we don't.
The other two big things, buffs that clerics as a whole are getting, though. The first one that is really cool is Divine Fonts are now not tied to Charisma. You just get maximum possible number of Divine Fonts you'd previously be able to get from maxing out Charisma, but you don't have to invest in Charisma. The class is no longer mad between two mental stats, which is great.
Well, it's not actually on this page, but yeah, they have mentioned that. I'm looking forward to it.
I think that's probably one of my favorite changes, to be honest. It just makes the class so much more elegant and not have to worry about it building. But the other big one too, and this sort of is going to affect all Divine casters, is the change to alignment damage, which everything is now going to be spirit damage.
Yes.
Which I love, by the way. Like, spirit damage is like, it's sort of based on the Spirit Blast spell from original 2E, where it was like, you could target a creature that had basically any creature that had a soul, and like you could use it to target things like creatures possessing other creatures and things like that, which is very clever. So now they've just made that a baseline, and that's going to be one of the go-to damage types for Divine casters. Yeah,
and the sanctification will mean that they can either bend it, towards holy or not unholy. It's something I've started doing in my games already, where people have been like, is this creature weak against good damage or positive damage? And I've just gone, what? I'm rolling the both together.
Basically,
good and holy, like good, positive. I mean, it's all holy. It's fine.
Yeah, it makes sense, to be honest. And I will say, like, I think it's probably the right way to go about it. The only thing I will say about it that I'm a little disappointed about is they've just cut off the lawful and chaotic axis off that. Because as much as I'm glad alignment is going away, I always thought the more interesting part of alignment was law and chaos versus order and order and versus chaos versus good and evil. So like that, I mean, that's my personal preference as well. But like, I also understand that it's just easier for them to have that all set in stone with more the moral alignments, the good and the evil. So
look, I think the two of us could have an extremely long conversation about adventure writing and how you can have more complex stories than, black and white, good and evil.
Oh, 100%.
Absolutely.
100%. Yeah, but in the end, I think I understand why they sort of kept it that simple. And really, most adventures are gonna lean towards like those sorts of stereotypical good versus evil sort of campaigns. So I get it. It's not worth it for like what will be like the niche interest stuff.
Now, witches.
Witches. Poor witches who have been just neglected up until now.
Right.
This is one of the big ones I was waiting for with the remaster, because it is such an in-depth class to get into as far as like what the potential for it is, but what is currently available through the APG version is just like it's a very much a half-baked class, and I tried to like it. I really tried to like give it a red hot go and be like, okay, I think I can enjoy this. I think there's some value here. But the more I looked into it, the more I'm just like, it's just not there. Like, why would I play an occult witch over a bard or a psychic? Why would I play a divine witch over a cleric or an oracle? There's no reason. It's, whatever trade-offs you have for doing that, it's just not worth it.
Yeah. And what we're finding here with the remaster is that witches will get they're getting patrons that are actually a lot more evocative. They have titles now instead of just being like a vague sentiment.
Yeah.
Which, I think a lot of people saw Baba Yaga in the patron for Pathfinder Legends or Lost Omens Legends, I think it was. And all the witch players were like, this is what we want. This is what we've always wanted. Please give us this. And they listened.
Yeah. Hey, Sean's in the chat.
Yeah. No, Judge, we did have that conversation earlier. Where it was
just
like, the witch the witch patrons felt kind of like an afterthought, whereas now they can be front and center. And as I have mentioned, I think I've mentioned this on Twitter and other places, the witch now you can actually, when it comes to home brewing, either for publishing and selling on Infinite or Beyond, or even for your home games.
Yeah.
The fact that they're actually providing the kind of proper scaffolding means that it makes it just so much easier to write for now.
Yeah, I think to me, like the familiar abilities you get with this, because this is the real sort of game changer here. You no longer just get hexes; you get these familiar abilities that your familiars will be able to evoke when you cast or sustain a hex.
Yeah.
So the first thing is the fact that it ties to hexes specifically means that there's more value added to the witch's unique ability. But I think more than that too, looking at the different abilities they have, it gives them, it really ties into, because I'm sort of mixed about witches having that familiar focus. To me, I'm more interested in like the other witchy aspects rather than the familiar. Yeah. But the familiar is such a core part of the really fantasy in the Pathfinder version. It makes sense that they get these abilities.
Well, regardless, we should move on to the wizard.
Yeah, we should. We need to get onto that one. But first, before we do that, can I just quickly talk about the witch feats? Because like we got some good feats. We got some good witch feats.
That's right.
I love the ceremonial knife.
Yep.
The ceremonial knife is just like, it's basically you just get a wand. You just get a wand, but it's a dagger. Like, that's just fun.
That is fun.
That's fun. I love how the old like extra potion thing for the cauldron is now called double. That's just very clever wordplay.
Shakespearean.
Yeah, the coven spell is interesting because this is literally a boost to spellcast. One of the reactions is a boost to spellcasting damage, which we don't have a lot of in the game so far. So I'm all for that. Like, it's a very you can choose one of three actions. One of two, sorry. So you can add a status bonus damage equal to the spell's rank. Rank is the new term for levels, by the way. Spell levels for people who aren't familiar with that. And spell shape, and spell shape, which is meta magic, the new name for meta magic. Apply the effects of one spell shape feat you know to the spell, so you can share meta magic with other players, which is cool.
And quick shout out to my own work with Sinclair's Almanac. But the teamwork, I believe we have a teamwork feat that goes along similar lines.
Yeah.
Or at least we did, but it got knocked down. I don't remember.
Yeah, and and before we quickly move on, I just want to say I don't think it's on this page, but they've mentioned there's like a feat that gives you a flying broom now.
Yeah, no,
Which
I
is
have heard
excellent. Like this, the witch. Like I'm not sure if this is going to be like the thing that tips the witch over into like my like top 3 classes sort of thing, but it's already in like a much better place than it was before. So I'm really excited to see what the final version looks like.
that. I mean, it's probably going to be the next. When I'm done with Septimus, my wizard and PFS, I'm probably going to go to a witch.
Yeah,
And I'm just
I
going to
think
be insufferable about it.
witches are going to be in a much better place. I'm very excited to finally have a witch that is well thought out.
Now, let's get everyone angry.
Okay, let's get everyone angry. Let's just. Should I start with the spice, or should we like build it up slowly?
Oh no, start with the spice. We got 15
Okay.
minutes before we have to move on.
Okay. Anyone who thinks that the changes to the arcane schools has not like is a nerf to wizards, you have not like grasped the capacity that this allows now.
Yeah.
Like, rules is written. The GM can just decide to let you have more spells to your school. So yeah, at first glance, the curriculums are much more simple than just saying you get to access every class, every school from a... every spell from a school. And I will just say too, I love spell schools. Spell schools have always been one of my favorite things about the D20 systems, and I am very sad they're going away in Pathfinder 2nd Edition. I also get why they're going away.
Yes.
So it's definitely a lot more hassle for them to just try and rebrand everything and sort of figure out how they're going to do spells when they can just say, like, they've this trait system they already have to spell out how certain spells work. So why wouldn't you just use that instead?
But yeah, the curriculum spells. A superscript U indicates an uncommon spell. Your GM might allow you to swap or add other spells to your curriculum if they strongly fit the theme.
Yeah. Now,
it's like the uncommon tag, everyone.
Yeah, exactly. This is the thing. I get that there are a lot of players who are concerned, like, I'm gonna have an anal retentive GM who's not gonna let me do that, or the GM's gonna say it's too much effort, or maybe like, I don't know what's gonna happen with Pathfinder Society. Hopefully they'll be a bit flexible, but you know, if they're not, then that's gonna suck. And that will be a nerf, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But for most people who are gonna be playing in their home games, like, this kind of opens up a lot more freedom for them to have these more interesting schools that give you a lot more freedom to utilize your spell slots. Like, for example, School of Battle Magic, the example that I've seen a lot of from the people who are in the same mindset as me and saying, like, yeah, this is actually a good thing. A lot of the level 1, rank 1 now, evocation spells in the current game, a lot of them are just damaging spells that really trail off later in the game. So you end up having this like vestigial spell slot that you can't even fill with like a utility spell that can have some use. You're stuck with like filling it with Burning Hands or level 1 magic missile. Like, you know, you're never gonna like once you're at level 10, you're never gonna find a use for that.
Probably not. And it's one of the things that I wanted to mention, particularly with the School of Battle Magic, the school spells.
So can I just say, Force Bolt, one of the most slept on focus spells in the game.
Right.
Anyone who says it's bad has no idea what they're talking about.
But
here it is, here comes the spice.
The initial school spell is Force Bolt, yeah?
Yeah.
That's the invocation, the current evocation initial focus spell. And I believe energy absorption is the one from Adjuration.
Yeah, so they're mixing it around a little bit.
And it makes sense. And it's just... Look, already on Twitter, someone mentioned the whole thing, oh, I don't like the curriculums. And within 10 minutes, I wrote up a whole new curriculum for a water-based pirate school of wizardry.
Yes.
And it's just... There are so many options with this.
Yeah. Yeah, it's what like we're seeing it in chat already. Like, you know, like Sean is saying, like the new spells seem to be addressing some of the fall off as well. They seem to be focusing on spells having ancillary effects. Yes. Exactly. So they're already future proofing it to make it so that you have things to do, rather than worrying about whether the spells are going to be useful later in the game.
Yeah, and like what Jared was saying, it's providing a framework. It's providing scaffolding. So, for instance, there's a big focus on Pathfinder Infinite at the moment. So, if you want to make more of the wizard schools for Galarian, you can do that. Or if you're completely free for a party, you could just start making your own up.
Yeah, and here's the other thing too that I think a lot of people miss. I think it is interesting that a lot of people complain about how they feel the wizard is a little too hard for a lot of particularly newer players to get into, or players who aren't familiar with spellcasting.
Yeah.
And so the base wizard at the moment, you throw them in the deep end, basically going, okay, you have access to all these spells from a particular spell list.
And you can only pick these ones.
Well, not even that. It's just no. I mean, with the current one, it's you have you get thrown in. You have evocation magic. That's a lot of spells to pick from.
It is,
and it's overwhelming for new players. This is the thing I think a lot of particularly long-time players tend to forget. It's very easy to lose sight of what it's like to be a new player and being overwhelmed by choice. Yeah. So having these clean-cut schools that just have these nice little lists, it's catering to sort of a lower common denominator to ease them in at the expense of players who might want to have a much more expanded list. But in the end, they're giving you the option to expand that list if you want. So it's just nice to have these options.
And you'll notice, this isn't something the one I did up for Twitter, but you'll notice with the curriculum's spells is that a lot of the first level ones, they start off with 4.
Yeah.
That is the basis for a first level wizard right there. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. Looking at school battle magic, shield, telekinetic projectile. Yeah,
Fire Force, yeah.
Yeah.
One thing I like about the curriculum is the possibility for sub-curriculums like a splinter sect of the School of Protean Form that dives harder into monstrous transformations. It kind of makes me sad that Strength of Thousands is already out now. It's been out for over a year now, and it's just now we're getting curriculums. Could you imagine this system in the Mugambi?
Yeah.
All the different curriculums for all the different types of wizardry and stuff like that. It would be amazing.
Pathfinder Infinite supplement is writing itself. Get on that.
Yeah, no, pretty much.
But look, in the end, I think in many ways, all the complaints about the wizard changes, it's a very sort of short-sighted, knee-jerk reaction to something that is actually going to be a good thing in the long run. The worst thing you could possibly say about it is that there's a particular combination of focus spells that are being mixed around that you don't like anymore, but which is an actual change. But I don't know anyone who's dying on the hill of focus spells for a wizard. As for the actual spell lists themselves, with the curriculum lists, the possibility for expansion is it seems limiting because they've kind of just given you a very bare bones and sort of chassis to go with, but the potential to have a much more diverse spell list with that extra spell slot you get each level is going to be much more than it was before. And Wizard is one of my Wizard is one of my favorite classes. My top 3 spellcasters at the moment are Psychic, Sorcerer, and Wizard. And it's Wizard is such a slept on class. So many people give it crap because they think it's boring and because they don't like Vancian casting and all that. But it really does embody the whole you put time and effort into learning how to play a wizard well, you're gonna get results for it.
I'm aware.
Yeah, I know I'm preaching to the choir for you, but I'm just saying to everyone else and sort of just trying to get people to see the wizard is it's definitely a much higher skillful class than a lot of other particular casters, but it still embodies that idea of what it used to in those older systems where it was a class that rewarded a lot of payoff. It just does it in a way that's a lot more subtle and isn't as explosive. It's just more versatile and has more tools.
Yeah.
And that's what a wizard should be. It should reward you for that investment. And having these spells, these new schools that will allow you to expand your lists like never before, it's going to be a good thing.
All right. Well, what do we have, Flags? Well, I think we probably should get on to Rage of Elements.
Yeah.
Because that is why people are here.
Well, yeah, I think the classes were the big one. I don't think there's too much else. I'm just going to have a quick gander ahead myself to see if there's anything I want to touch, if there's anything I want to touch on quickly before we go on.
I think reposition being back is good, but we've already talked about that.
Yeah. There's a few... there's a few skills that are... A few new skill feats that are interesting. Monster crafting. built in, which I think it's a good compromise. Like I was saying to someone else, someone was on the Reddit the other day. It was like people were saying like it's not that great because it doesn't really allow the monster hunting fantasy. But it's like yeah, but like if you want a real monster hunting fantasy, like just look at Battlezoo and like see how robust that system is. It's a good system, but it is dense.
It is very dense.
You do that when you want to get into all that minutia. This is a good compromise for like I want to have harvest a dead dragon's fire glands so I can make a flaming rune or something like that. And like all you're doing is you're just using survival instead of crafting. So and with the changes to crafting with how formulas are working, that's going to be much more intuitive.
Which is something that I'm looking forward to as well. And as someone who has used the monster crafting rules we were using it in Abomination Vaults, we've kind of dropped off from using it because it is just so dense. Yeah. I think it. Yeah, it just doesn't work for Abomination Vaults when it comes down to it.
Yeah, I like it in theory, but I think it's one of those ones you really have to commit to or have the right campaign to.
And the right players.
Exactly, and that's it, yeah, and your players have got to be fully invested, otherwise it doesn't mean anything. I'm just having a quick look at other spells, because we got some spells here that have sort of, again, it's all cleaned up. We got Chilling Darkness here, which is a good example of how the new Holy Unholy traits work. So basically, it's an unholy spell that if
too far.
There it is. So it's an unholy spell that if you target a creature that is holy sanctified, it deals extra damage. So that's now instead of targeting a good aligned creature or a divine creature.
Yeah.
And that's much cleaner, in my opinion, and will be much more generally useful because, alignment is a bit more. Alignment is a bit more restrictive.
It is a bit more restrictive, and it's also that whole thing of having to ask the GM, what's their alignment?
Yeah, again, like it makes a lot more. It makes a lot more thematic sense too. Like I never liked how alignment was. That was one of the things I did not like about original 2E. Like it's alignments. I like the concept, but I didn't like them being mechanically something that actually mattered.
Yeah. It was because it was one of those awkward things where it's like the players would encounter a bandit, and it's like he's a bandit, so he must be evil, and it's like, well, not necessarily.
Yeah.
Whereas now someone can rock up in like the Asmodean runes and like the big black robes and the red symbols, and you can go,
I wonder if this guy's unholy.
Yeah, this guy's sanctified for unholy. We're good to go, boys. Let's get him.
Yeah, basically. Exactly. Yeah. The other one I want to touch on quickly too. They've buffed magic weapon, or should I say runic weapon as it's called now, which is on the next page.
Next one.
Yeah, so runic weapon now scales, which I find interesting. It's one of those ones I'm still a little bit. I'm sort of still getting a feel for that one because it still works the same at level 1 as it did before. It becomes a +1 striking weapon.
Yep.
Extremely potent early game weapon. Extremely potent at early game. It's going to be a must-have spell. I'm a little surprised they kept it and just kind of went nuts with it now because heightened to level 6, it becomes a +2 greater striking weapon. And then at rank, I'm trying to get into the habit of saying that, 9th rank is +3 major striking. So if you look at the leveling curves for how runes work, for the fundamental runes, these spells come online slightly before you get access to those runes by level.
Yeah.
So this is going to be interesting. I'm going to be curious to see how this goes. Like,
yeah, right.
Like I'm sort of... I will admit, fundamental runes are something I don't care much for. I use a variant ABPE system in my games where I just have all of the weapons and armor sort of automatically scale when they're equipped.
Yeah.
It's just, I don't care for it. It's arbitrary vertical scaling progression that I don't really care for. But runic weapon is like, I'm going to have to take this into account now because like it's definitely one of those things that I don't know whether it's going to be a must-have or if it's going to be like too sort of costly to use.
Yeah. I think it's going to be one of those ones that people stick on a wand.
Yeah, I actually, that's a fair point. That's a fair point.
It's going to be someone, you're either going to see it on wands a lot or it's going to be in the mega spell list and never leaves.
Yeah. Yeah, my only concern about it, like, because it is such potent vertical scaling, it is going to become a must-have to some degree. But yeah, I don't know how. Like for level 1, it definitely is extremely potent. But I'm gonna have to see how this goes. Like once you sort of get up to these higher levels, because yeah, if you can get a weapon that you can just buff up to the next level of striking rune, like 2 levels before you're supposed to, that's extremely potent.
Yeah.
That's extremely potent, and I'll be very, like... But the downside, of course, is that it's a level 6 spell slot and a level 9 spell slot, so...
Yeah, it's going to be chunky.
It's going to be chunking, and that can cut into a lot of other resources that by that level you'll have plenty more to use. But as you said, you can also just get a wand. So...
heightened 6, that would be what? Level 11 for your wizard?
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, at that point, there are a lot of tasty spells that you might want instead.
Yeah, exactly. So, but as you were saying, like you can work around it with like scrolls and wands and things like that. Yeah. So like, whether that's just going to be something that becomes expected for marshals, like that's my only concern with that. It could be too mandatory.
Well, those gap levels at the very least.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those ones where like I feel like it's one of those ones I do feel like it could be like a nothing burger and like it's not potent enough to really matter.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there's that part of me that's like it is quite potent, and it's not like marshals need much more help in terms of damage scaling. So we'll see how that one goes.
We will. And Sean does bring up a good point in that.
Yeah, item cost would be. Absolutely, yeah. And that's something a lot of people don't consider too. Like, this is something I say to a lot of people who are like, you don't actually need spellcasters because you can just get wands and things like that. Like, you spend so much money getting that to work. You spend so much money, you spend so many feat investments and multi-classing investments to do that. Like, just because your fighter can cast, like, Long Strider and Haste on themselves or whatever it is, like, because they've, like, got Trick Magic item or multi-class into Wizard, like, you've given up a lot for that.
You have.
So... yeah, Great Fun on the Fly just meant for special fights. Exactly. So, I'm hoping that they've sort of thought that one through and, like, they've kind of gone, yeah, this isn't going to be a problem. But it is one of those ones where it's like, if it does end up being a sort of a must-have for those levels, I'm not going to be surprised.
Well, is there anything else we really need to go... Well, there's the character sheet.
Yeah, the character sheet. New character sheet. Look, I mean, I use Path Builder.
But
I use Path Builder. And Foundry, so like I'm a heathen. The character sheet has never been a problem for me, but this is definitely a lot cleaner than the old one.
It is a lot cleaner, and it's a lot cleaner. I think they're just kind of making expectations because that's only that's the
absolutely.
So for instance, you're not seeing like the spells on here.
Yeah.
So I think there's an expectation that you will have a separate, if you're using pen and paper, you will have a separate list there, which makes absolute sense. Because when it comes to when you're playing a wizard, there's never enough space on the page that they have for spells.
Never enough. Yeah, there's never enough space. Yeah, it's spell keeping, like. Again, I'm one of those heathens who's always done everything digital, even back when I started playing D&D, and like, I don't know how I would do spellcasters pen and paper. Like, it really is just so...
With PFS, I did it for 1.5 weeks before I downloaded Path Builder and just imported my wizard onto there. I tried it. I tried pen and paper, but there were too many points where it's like, okay, how do I mark the fact that I've actually cast a spell? Okay, I'll cross it out, but then I've got to erase it.
Yeah.
It just got too messy.
Yeah. And the character sheet I've ever seen with enough space was the 1E portfolio, but that's $15 character booklet. Yeah, that's like that's a... I was talking with one of the regulars on the subreddit today, and he was jokingly calling Paizo big dice at one point. I'm just like, I feel it's very much like... it's very much like 50... Like, oh yeah, like, we're going to make an overly complicated character sheet, so character system, so you can buy our character sheets. G-Wiz is right. Like, Pathbuilder also points out when the rules have amusing interactions. So
it really does.
I cannot shout out to Red Razors, the Pathbuilder developer. Like, you are an absolute godsend and like a pillar of the Pathfinder community. Like, it's such a amazing app.
And there's so many people that just do this voluntarily. Like, I know, I'm pretty sure Road Racer has a Patreon.
I'm sub to it. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm cutting back all my Patreons at the moment because I need to save some money, and I'm refusing to do like Red Razor is one of the few because like it's cheap for starters. He doesn't ask for much, but like I use it so much, it's worth it. Like it's ridiculous how one person is just like honestly, my only concern is like, you know, what happens if he falls off a cliff?
Right.
Like, what are we going to do then? No. Who's going to take up development? he's a point of failure if he goes. Like, the entire 2E community is screwed because we lose Path Builder.
Like, I'm pretty sure someone will come in and they'll figure something out, but...
I know they will, but it's such a... Again, like, there's so many, like, pillars that hold up through the, that hold up, like, the various systems that have helped Pathfinder 2E be so successful, like Path Builder, the Foundry modules, all that sort of stuff. You know, it's one of those things, like, hopefully, like, we have enough interest now to, like, keep that going regardless who drops in and out. But, like, yeah, it's such a, like, it's amazing the community support, but because it is community support, we can't expect it to be, you know...
Yes.
To be guaranteed.
But...
Yeah.
Rage of Elements.
Yeah, let's actually talk about the thing we were going to talk about originally.
Look,
we've spoken about me, and we've spoken about Remaster. Let's actually talk about Rage of Elements now.
Well, we kind of had to talk about it, because there's a lot of the Remaster stuff that's coming into it. Like, even on the second index, it has a updated rules thing for the Remaster stuff, where things have been changed, and it goes through the explanations. But because we have already talked about the Remaster, we don't have to go into that, and we can jump straight to...
Yeah.
Where is the Kineticist? Yes, we're going straight to the Kineticist. There it is!
Yeah, so... Yeah, this class, I would go so far as to say, is like, this is Pathfinder 2nd Edition fully realized. Like, this is... Like, this is class as an achievement. Like I was looking forward to it, and like I kept my hopes in check because I was like, okay, I don't want to hype myself up and then go, it's like, oh, that was only alright. But no, like this class is everything I wanted it to be.
It's like I completely understand. Like I've skimmed it before. I did a full read through today to prepare for all this, and I understand why a lot of people are having, shall we say, opinions about the class and what it means for the system overall. Yeah. Because there are some very interesting things that they're doing with it.
Yeah. I think the thing I find the most interesting about Kineticist, and we'll sort of see that as we go along, but the thing I find most interesting is that it is such a self-sufficient class for the most of it. Like, you really don't need to... I mean, for starters, it's very difficult to sort of multi-class out of it and sort of find something else to do outside of the class itself, because its proficiencies are so strict and limited to make sure it has that focus on its blasts and impulses. But the trade-off to that is that you don't need anything else. Everything you need to make the Kineticist work is within the class itself. Like, you don't need to go outside the class. Yeah, there's just so much there.
There was a thing where it happened a lot with the champion and the wizard, where there were points where their feat progression where it was kind of like it felt empty, and it felt like a point where you could easily just take an archetype. Yeah. But having gone through the Kineticist, there's no such thing as an empty level.
It really is, like, it's such a meaty class. Sorry, I just saw Sean anger of the periodic table. Nice. Yeah.
I know Foundry PF2 has had trouble implementing the Kineticist, but they've said a much clearer implementation is coming in a week or two. Yeah, so they've got an actual team working on the Kineticist. I can actually talk a little bit about it. There's an actual team working on the Kineticist. They've got 3 or 4 people. The guy who is working on the Foundry module for the Almanac is also on the team for the Kineticist, helping out and making that work a little bit better.
Yeah.
So a cleaner implementation is absolutely on the way.
Yeah, I haven't used Foundry for a couple of weeks. I've only had all my games recently been in person, so I haven't really had a chance to look at. I don't think I've really had a chance to look at it since the version 11 cut over. So
Yep.
I downloaded it the other night on my laptop. I need to have a look at it, but yeah, I'm a bit behind in Foundry at the moment.
That's all good.
But yeah, Kineticist. Yeah, so yeah, like I think the first thing. So looking at the gates and the elements.
Yes.
So I think this is something that I was like very big on when they were sort of doing the playtesting and when all the initial discussions were happening about the Kineticist. I was really dead set on like, I want each element to be different.
Yes.
Like I want it to each have a different focus. I want them to feel different. I want them to play different. I want them to feel like they should. I want, Earth to be strong and heavy and chunky. I want fire to just be blasting all over the place. I want water to sort of have that combination of like, you're pushing knockback waves and you're healing and all that, and I think they've hit that on the head with pretty much every Kineticist gate here.
Like, I was a little bit concerned for the interactions between Earth and Metal, but they went a similar direction that I would, where it was like, Earth is for armor class, Metal is more for resistances.
It is, yeah, and that's kind of it. I think the element that I was the most... Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think the element I was most pleasantly surprised by was air, because air I tend to find can be a fairly boring element in like a lot of like RPG mechanics and things like that. Like it's very sort of like, oh, what do? You blow things around a lot. Oh yeah, sorry, Aang, but airbenders are not that cool. But no, it's I'm really surprised by air. As far as like its versatility, as far as like what it can do to support yourself and everyone. It's got infinite flying at level 8 for starters, which is ludicrous. Again, another sort of like, you
use, because in addition you get an impulse junction, a benefit that occurs when you use an impulse of the chosen element that takes 2 actions or more. But for air in particular, it's I don't care so much about the stride up to half your speed. I care more about the step.
Yeah.
That's like a free step.
Either or. Like, honestly, all of those options are incredibly potent. Like, getting fly speed, being able to stride, being able to step. Like, just having any of those options is incredibly, like, worthwhile to do. Like, and have them all at once when you get the option to do those impulses. Like, it's an extremely mobile option.
It really is. And it's kind of what we've always wanted to see more of in Pathfinder 2, like more mobile combats, and I think particularly with the air kinesis, it's something we're going to see a lot of.
Yeah. So air is probably like the one that has pleasantly surprised me the most. Fire is just satisfying. I grokked out a full fire build, and like you know this, but I don't know if the chat would care, but basically, and other viewers, but like the big discussion on like places like the Pathfinder subreddit, the 2E subreddit have been for years now have been like, we want a blaster caster. We feel you can't do like satisfactory damage with what our spellcasting options are, and they feel it's limited because spellcasters have to balance utility with that damage. Yeah. That's a whole kettle of fish unto itself. But what I'm going to say with this is fire kineticist, if I don't know how much blaster you want than that.
Yeah, look, I've had like I said, I did a full read through earlier today, and I was like, fire is pretty much what a lot of people have been wanting for a blaster caster. Yeah,
it's literally blasting. Like, at its most pure, at its most, like, you can level a small island nation with the amount of AoE they have. Like, it's ridiculous. Like, and that seems fun. It's also just, like, it's the one that has all the damage boosts. You get, like, right there, its impulse junction is literally increased damage size. Yeah. Increased damage size. And then you get things like the aura that gives creatures weakness to fire. So it's all about the damage. That's exactly what I expected and wanted from fire, and that's good.
We are going to jump around a little bit here, because I wanted to go to the Elemental Blast, in particular for fire. Yeah. Because Elemental Blast is one of the things that has been talked about a lot, because it is the quintessential, I'm just going to blast them with my kinesis.
Yeah. So anyway, then I started blasting.
Yeah, no, pretty much. So with your standard elemental junction, or your elemental blast, does a d6 fire damage. If you do 2 actions or more, it instantly goes to a d8. That is a
Yeah.
60-foot D8 fireball.
Yeah, with adding your Constitution modifier as well.
Yeah, which you will have as your key ability score. It's just... Also,
like,
Seth Tech. Yes, no, actually, the metal gate does turn you into a shredder eventually.
It can. It's ludicrous. But yeah, the thing I find most interesting about the elemental blast is the direction they went from it. Because they could have made it a spell. They could have made it just a weapon strike. They just decided it's its own thing.
Yeah.
And it's key to class DC.
Yeah. Like,
And
I was expecting it to be a focus spell. Like a focus cantrip.
But it's kind of genius, really, because, like, now can be its own thing in a vacuum. And again, this is why I think the class is so genius. Everything is just self-contained.
Yeah.
And, like, I was having a conversation about this yesterday, again, on the subreddit, because, like, someone was like, I feel they've, like, overcorrected in terms of, like, not letting other classes access elemental blasts and not having blasts, you know, like, all the impulses and things like that work with meta magic and all that. But, like, what you can do now, like, by siloing them off from all of those mechanics, you can focus completely on having the kineticist be its own class, both without having to worry about multi-classing to get other things, and also without having to worry about, like, having that be a balancing factor down the line with future mechanics. So, you know, if they were to ever introduce a new meta magic option and kineticists, impulses, and blasts were considered magic, they'd have to be like, okay, we can balance all these spells, but we've got to consider elemental, we've got to consider kineticist abilities as well, and that's just a pain in the ass. So it makes complete sense that they just, again, silo it off, make it its own thing. And also, too, with elemental blasts, like, I keep telling people, like, being able to switch to energy damage in particular is incredibly potent.
Yes.
Like, just having that as a baseline, like, fire, for starters, is the most common resistance, but it's also the most common weakness as well.
Yeah.
And then you consider how it just bypasses physical damage. Like, and then you look at things like air that has a physical slashing damage, but then it also has electricity.
Yeah.
That's essentially, it's literally versatile E.
Yeah.
Like, it's literally versatile electricity damage. Like, it's ridiculous how good that is. Water's got bludgeoning and cold.
Yeah.
Wood's got vitality and bludgeoning. Like, you know, it's, again, like, people underestimate how strong the ability to use energy damage as a baseline damage type is.
There's a feat later on that adds a third different damage to it.
Yeah.
Because I think fire, it gives you the option to do cold as well.
There is, yeah. I went on a rant for you. That's one thing. That's one of my few gripes with the class. We didn't get lightning bending firebenders.
Yeah, no.
We didn't get no justice for Zuko. No justice for Zuko and Iroh in this. Like, that's one of my only complaints about the class.
Well, one of the things I didn't know about with the kineticist, and I think I breezed through it on my first read, but today I saw the kinetic aura thing with channel elements.
Yeah.
And because I heard a lot of the scuttlebutt, all the rumors about the kineticist, and I was like, do they not, like, have a balancing point? And then I saw channel elements, and I was like, there we go.
Yeah.
There's that balance point.
So the thing I went on this sort of I spoke with you about this before, Matt, in one of our chats. But one of the things that I think has been the most enlightening about seeing the kineticist has been, it's really solidified for me what the difference between, like, the martial style of play and the spellcasting style of play in this game is. Yeah. And I think understanding that would go a long way to help people who have, like, particularly, like, spellcasting is obviously one of the big controversial hot topics a lot of the time in this system. But I think, and just saying too, Jirak, like, the subreddit is got a lot going on at the moment, but that's, again, a kettle of fish unto itself. But the thing is, like, you sort of look at the kineticist, and, like, this is a sort of a pseudo spellcaster that has things like impulses, which essentially act as spells, including overflow, which is a mechanic that literally just lets you burn your active aura to do a super powerful attack. Mm-hmm. But then you can just charge up your aura again next turn and use it, or charge on the same turn and just use another overflow the next turn. And the thing is, the game is completely balanced around the idea that you are going to be doing that. Like, you can just use your ridiculous level 18, I summon the fires of 1,000 hells to, like, you know, to burn my opponents, like, constantly, over and over again. But you compare that to something like a spellcaster, and what's the difference? Like, the difference is that action economy. Like, you have to use your action economy wisely as a kineticist to actually get results. You have to consider, well, I need to channel my elements. Then if I burn my overflow, then it's gone. Certain impulses require sustain, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
But then you get spellcasting. Spellcasting, you just have a list, you use it, and the spell just works.
Yeah.
It just goes. And that's the difference. Spellcasting is a cerebral exercise about what options do I have available in my big toolbox of options, and I'm just going to plonk it down right here.
Yeah.
Kineticist is a martial in the sense that it's got sort of that action flow, that combat flow. It's got to be very considerate about how it engages with that 3-action economy. And the skill ceiling with the class is determined by how cleverly you interact with those options you have at any given moment.
Yeah. And I think there is going to be a lot of people who just kind of, do their elemental blast turn after turn after turn. And I think it's kind of like, just let them. I mean,
yeah.
The kineticist has so much breadth with it, but if all they really want to do is throw firebolts every turn, I'm kind of like, you know what, whatever.
Yeah.
You do your house.
Yeah, I mean, in many ways, like, you can literally just do that with the kineticist if you want to. Like, there's nothing stopping you. You can just spam a kinetic blast all you want. Is it going to do as much damage as a fighter? No, but, like, it's there.
Yeah.
And out of all of, like, the blasty options in the game, it's probably the most viable as far as straight damage.
Yeah. Which I think is the position that it's trying to take. Like, we can talk about, it's replacing clusters and things. Honestly, I think its position is just range DPS.
It's absolutely not. Like, I adore this class. It is a very well designed class. I still love my casters. I still love Psychic and Wizard and Sorcerer. Like, I'm really looking forward to the Witch and Oracle changes. I'm gonna love every single one of those classes because they each have a different thing to do in the game.
Yeah.
So there's no stepping on toes here. This is definitely an interesting design space, and I think in many ways Paizo has sort of figured out a way to have that sort of spellcasting-esque design in a way that a lot of people want to engage with in martials. But I also think it's not going to invalidate spellcasters, and I think it's not going to be a replacement for spellcasters.
No, not at all. Like, I would not play this over a spellcaster. I like prestidigitation too much.
Yeah, I mean, I would absolutely play this class, but I would not do it in spite of spellcasters. I would do it because there's a particular fantasy I want from this class, and then I've got other fantasies I want from spellcasters. They're not mutually incompatible, and that's the problem with a lot of these discussions are going to have. You already have people talking about how you can have, this class is going to make spellcasters redundant, and this is like, oh, you can just... We figured it out, we don't need spell slots anymore. It's like, no, it's not that simple. That it's an extremely reductive take, and like it really does more disservice to how good a lot of those other classes are, rather than anything about the kineticist.
Well, one thing I wanted to touch on before we kind of move on with it, but the single, like the gates, right? The elemental gates. I get the feeling that the good people over at Pathfinder Infinite have already had this thought, but just because there's 6 here doesn't mean there has to be only 6, yeah? Like, you could absolutely have a Sonic gate.
Yeah.
Like,
the plane of Sonic.
You gotta go fast. Speed boost. But no, have things like that manipulate sound. And kind of do Sonic blasts and that kind of thing.
I will say...
Just because the 6 are there doesn't mean you can't add more.
I really want to see, because some people have been saying like they want to see like the Void Kineticist from 1E back.
Yeah.
I really think there's room for like a full class archetype that replaces the elemental gates with like the other planar gates. So like, I don't know, like, what do they call like the outer gates and things like that? Yeah. So you can get like Void and Vital Energy and all that sort of stuff.
Oh man, see, I would like that. I would like to see this kind of like what they've done with the Kineticist done towards like Vital Energy.
Yeah, I mean, Wood sort of does touch on that a little bit, because it is sort of got a bit of a vital focus, but that's more in terms of how it works with plants. Like, it's not the pure, I'm shooting light rays out, I'm a being of divine energy and I'm shooting light rays out of my eyes sort of thing.
Well, there was the old thing for Pathfinder 1 that if you went to the plane of positive energy with that planar adaptation,
Yeah.
you would immediately die from being overhealed.
Yeah.
Like, you would get so filled with positive energy that you would just die. And I would love to see that kind of thing expressed for a kineticist. So there are a lot of options going forward, especially in the design space for it. And I'm kind of keen to see what other people do with it.
Yeah. Just to touch on some things in chat quickly, Sean asked, didn't acid get missed with versatile element, or am I misremembering? It does, in fact. I'm pretty sure if we go to the level 1 feats, I think Earth gets acid. In fact, speaking of Sonic, does one of the ones get Sonic from versatile elements? Let's have a look at level 1 feats.
Extended Kinesis? No, we will get to Extended Kinesis, though. Versatile Blasts. There we go. Water. Acid.
Water gets acid. Earth gets poison. That's right. Okay, I thought there was a Sonic one as well, but I obviously misremembered that.
Earth gets poison. I find that interesting. Like, it makes sense, but still. Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. Like I said, fire got gypped. Should have been lightning, but that's the point. Anyway. But I will say though, like, as someone who's like my energy type of choice is electricity. It's like if I was the Pokemon gym leader, I'd be the electric gym leader. Like, I just love I can make an electrokineticist by doing dual air and metal gates.
You're
like
right.
I've grokked that one out, and it's like I can go full electro on that one.
Like, just walk into combat with a pair of spears that are just like lightning rods and toss them at people, because weapon infusion's right there.
Well, there's literally a feat called Lightning Rod where you impale someone with like a metal spike that summons electricity to them, I'm pretty sure. So, yeah, it's badass. Like, the metal plane is metal.
Yeah.
Like, it's one of the coolest things they've added. We're not going to be talking much about the lore tonight, but yeah, the plane of metal is just so cool.
Like, they have, just briefly, one of the metal gods is a rust monster.
Yeah, I love both the metal gods. We'll talk about that in a bit, but yeah, like I love a lot of the gods in this as well.
But yeah, the kineticist is like, okay, so most of the class things are just what you would expect. Otherwise.
The base class ones are very sort of,
It's all just, the standard things that we expect. I'm not going to go through them because we don't really need to. The junctions I do find interesting, though.
Junctions, this is where a lot of the versatility comes in for the builds.
Yes.
And this is also where, like, I like how it rewards the specialization in single elements, but it does allow you things to do if you decide to expand the gate and, fork the path and get other elements. Yeah. Yeah, like you can see there.
I'll zoom it out, and that's from 5th.
Yeah.
But you can do thresholds, you can do gate junctions, and the gate junctions give you extra, like, critical effects on your blasts.
Yeah.
Or just gain resistances, and...
Yeah. And I'll be frank, a lot of them aren't exactly the most sexy feats. Like, resistance is a fairly, like, bread and butter sort of, like, it makes sense compared to things like some of the junctions and some of the critical blasts.
Yeah.
But I mean, in the end, like, it's extremely customizable how you want to do it.
Oh yeah, like the skill junctions, for instance. It's you become trained in a skill, and you get a skill feat. That's easy fixed. That's easy, kind of moved around, fix it, change it, do whatever you want with it.
Yeah, do retraining and like figure out how you want to do your other feats and things like that, depending how that goes. But yeah, it's doable. But it's sort of like nice little bonuses. It's that, like I said, reward that sort of specialization, but don't overtly punish you for missing out on them.
Yeah.
And in the end, if you do have something like a dual gate junction, like a dual gate, and you just stick to those two elements, you're going to be fairly proficient in those two elements by the time you get to higher levels.
Oh, yeah. Like, they're not punishing people for wanting to, like, do the avatar thing and have the multiple elements. But they're also rewarding the people who are like, okay, I want to be a specialist fire blaster. Like, I want to be a fire kineticist. I want to be the fire.
Exactly. And I think in many ways, like, that's the best way they can do it as far as keeping the balance. Like, it's if you specialize, you will get those bonuses that are very in line with what your element is. but you can have, like you said, you can have that avatar fantasy as well.
Yes.
So, which is cool. I think they've done this very, especially because like knowing the playtest, they kind of like on the playtest they kind of had single gate, dual gate, and then they let you do 4 elements from the start.
Yeah.
So like, that was sort of a bit clunky. So like the way they managed to actually figure it out and create that natural progression, it is almost a bit like the Avatar storyline, where like you journey around and you learn more that open up the other elemental gates for you. So like it's a natural story hook as well.
Not me. Kind of just noting out in my head how to actually run the Avatar series, like Aang the Last Airbender as a Pathfinder 2 campaign.
Yeah, just pointing out too, a lot of people have said like Kineticist is like the kind of class, it's a bit like Thaumaturge in that you can have like a full party of them and just everyone does something different.
Yeah,
and
no,
like
absolutely.
yeah, and I think this takes it well past Thaumaturge as well, because like Thaumaturge is fun, but it's very sort of focused on like that monster hunting stuff with its with all of its mortal weakness and things like that. But like but this, like, you will have truly different characters if you have like a party of 4 kineticists focusing on different builds.
Yeah. Like,
again, that's sort of the genius of this class. This is probably like the first truly like role diverse class in the entire system.
Yeah. Like, there is a lot of variability in there. And even then, I know they're still not going to be hitting as hard as the fighter, but some of the options that they just have at their disposal now is...
Yeah.
It really made me surprised, honestly.
Yeah.
That they went this hard with it. I think we worked it out the other night. The kineticist in and of itself is 20 pages.
Yeah.
And that's not really including the impulses either. Like, there's so much to it.
Yeah. It's a beefy class, but it needs to be. And I think
does.
like, again, going back to what I was saying before about like, you know, playing systems like 1E where there was so many chaff options that just didn't matter. Like, there's a lot, like, yeah, like you look at some things here, like, you know, like kinesis is kind of a nice flavor thing.
Yeah.
But you don't really need extended kinesis. But like for the actual like elemental feats themselves for the individual elements, there's a lot there.
There is. And speaking of, we'll probably just kind of blast through the kineticist like class feats because we'll get to the impulses because that's I feel like a lot of the meat is there. The command elemental I thought was interesting.
It's a nice flavor thing. It's going to be a bit niche, but like in the right campaign, it'll be useful. I think weapon infusion is kind of the MVP really, because I feel that's the one. It's almost like a little feat taxi in many ways. I feel like it's almost necessary for certain builds to sort of give them some versatility. But at the same time, I don't think it's like feat. Like you get so many feats. Yeah. Like with this class, it's almost not going to matter.
I mean, for instance, if you want to play Shredder, because that was mentioned in chat. If you want to play Shredder, it's weapon infusion at first level, and you're a metal kineticist, and you can get your armor and you can get your Shredder claws at first level.
Yeah, and like use it to get like force or sweep, backswing, agile, whatever you want.
Yeah, and every time you do the infusion, you can change it. Which I'm kind of like, wow.
It's kind of ridiculous, to be honest. Like, again, this is why I don't blame them for siloing the mechanics like this, because, like, imagine if, like, it was just a standard weapon that could do that.
Yeah.
Fighters being able to weapon infusion, that would just be ridiculous.
Safe elements, that's fine.
Yeah.
Counter element was one that I looked at and I was like, okay, I see what you're doing here. I'm not sure how I like it.
When the element serves no, you turn to counter using. Oh yeah, like I mean, it's a nice counterspell-esque feat, but
it's once again counterspell.
I'm fine with that, to be honest. I feel like I was actually having another conversation earlier today about like what's happening with counterspell in like the new system without spell schools and like, what is it, advanced counterspell, whatever it is. But yeah, like they're gonna have to redo a lot of the counterspell stuff. But I feel this is a very elegant way of doing it without like running into the 5e problem of like counterspell just works on everything.
Yeah,
like it makes sense. You play like a fire kineticist, you can counter fire. Like that's
both extremely makes absolute sense.
It's just extremely elegant. It gives you a niche. Like it's good.
I've spent a fair bit of time looking at counterspell and counter magic in general, just to see how I can make it work and pulling it apart and everything else like that. And seeing it done just so quickly and elegantly here is like, yeah, okay. But I can see.
I mean, Psychic has a very similar thing
with.
Yeah, Psychic has a very similar thing with mental spells, and again, like, it just makes all the sense in the world for that to happen.
Yeah.
Like, having those sorts of, like, specialist classes that can have that niche of, like, I counterspell this particular type of spell, like, yeah, again, elegant and works. And, like, it's not like, you know, fire magic and air magic and earth magic is going to be that rare that it's not going to happen.
Oh, absolutely not.
Yeah. The Dual Blast, I just want to point that one out quickly, because, again, Field Art 1 is also further up. It's like first in the second column there. Yeah, 2-element infusion, sorry. Yeah, you just missed it.
Missed it?
It's in the level 6.
Ah, there it is.
Yeah. Yeah, again, a little bit feat taxy. You basically get the best of all your kinetic elements.
Half the blast damage is the damage type of one, and then the other half is the damage type of the other element.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you basically get the best dice of the two and the best range of the two.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
So it's like, again, a little bit feat taxy. I feel it's kind of like you get, like, it's pretty damn good, but also I do get you probably won't want this for every single build if you're not going to be focusing on A, dual elements, and B, blasts all the time. So yeah, it's not like, and again, I kind of get, like, you don't want to load up things like Kinetic Blast with so many nuances like this that it becomes bloated, but yeah.
And 6 level's a good place to actually put it in all reality.
Yeah,
you
exactly.
Your Kinetic Blast by that point, and you kind of want to do something a little bit different with it.
100%.
Purify Element's just fun for flavor.
Yep.
Elemental Transformation I thought was interesting. Because it allows you to turn into an elemental.
Yeah.
Which makes a lot of sense for the kineticist, but I found it was interesting that it was one action. Like, I get that's once per day, but
that's
it's
a
one
good point,
action.
actually. I didn't notice that. Oh, that's cool. Gives it a bit of a gives it a bit of girth there. Like some nice action economy compared to the regular 2 action.
Well, with your 3 actions, it would be Elemental Transformation, Stride, Hit.
Yeah, exactly. Now, one thing I want to touch on quickly too, and I don't know if you would know this or if, like, this is just something that hasn't been covered because would be in core remaster, but you can get that for wood and metal as well. But the base spell at the moment, base elemental form spell, doesn't have wood and metal options. And I couldn't find anything in the book so far that covers that, so I'm gonna hazard they're baselining that in player core.
I would assume so, yeah.
But it's just interesting because I can't find anything on that just yet.
The other thing I thought interesting about Elemental Transformation is I'm pretty sure Wild Shape from the core book is 2 actions.
Yeah, so it is definitely like quite a action value feat.
Yeah, but Wild Shape this is one of the things I'm thinking of with interactions for the remaster classes. Yeah. So, particularly with the Druid, I'm thinking, are they going to use Elemental Transformation for the Druid's Wild Shape instead?
Yeah.
Instead of having it as a focus spell, just be like, here, take this feat. It works like the spell, but you do it for 1 action instead of 2.
Right.
Or they'll have a feat where you can do it once per day for 1 action. Because that's essentially what this is. It's quick and meta magic for elemental form.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of does make sense, though, because, like, the elemental forms, like, all the transformation stuff, particularly with, like, the fact that it's not getting a lot of the benefits, it's going to be using a lot of the baseline stats.
Yeah.
It's going to be a niche pick, really. Like, so it kind of makes sense that, like, the benefit of doing it as a caster is you get to go martial for a couple of rounds.
Yeah.
But, like, with this, you're already doing a fair bit of combat damage with it, so you won't need to have the transformation as direly to have that shift in gameplay. But you're right, having that as a 1 action action ability does add some unprecedented versatility to it.
Which, it's part of the reason why I wanted you on to talk about these kind of things, because I know there's a lot of people being like, oh, this is awesome, that's great, but it creates some interesting precedents for design. And
it really does.
we'll get to the impulses, for instance, because they do something extremely interesting.
Yeah.
And we see it right here with Aerial Boomerang. This is not a spell. Not a spell.
Yeah, this is like new cantrip level damage. For what's essentially 2 actions. And it's an AoE.
Yeah,
it's an AoE effect.
But it's also, instead of being like spell rank, it's your level plus 2. So at 3rd, 5th, 7th, so on, the damage increases by d4. This isn't tied to a spell, it's tied to your level.
Yeah, and it's interesting, because I do think the big thing with impulses is that they're pseudo-spells, in a way. So, like, a lot of the mechanics are just borrowed straight from spells, but they sort of don't have the exact same mechanical space. And that goes for the way they're designed as well, in terms of things like damage, in terms of, as we said before, how they interact with the action economy and all that. So, it's not accurate to say they're spells, but they are definitely spell-like.
Yeah.
I say winking at all the 1E players.
Well, yeah, and it's... Well, once again, going back to the, like, kinetic blasts, right?
Yeah.
So they have one action kinetic blast there. Does that mean that Paizo is flirting with the idea of, like, a one-action attack cantrip? Are we finally going to see one from Paizo?
Yeah. I mean... Yeah, I think that the answer is I don't know. Like,
yeah.
But the thing I find interesting about like Aerial Boomerang, for instance, like it's a very like, because it's a saving throw spell, so you can throw it at something. You can literally just throw it and then pop out a full, non-multi-attack penalty elemental blast, following it up.
Yeah.
So like that's some fairly consistent damage, even if you're not going to use it for area of effect.
Oh no, absolutely.
Like, it's very interesting. And then you have, like, the whole return thing, which... This is a very cool ability, by the way. Again, it has been, like, the most pleasant surprise out of all of these. There's some very fun stuff in this particular element.
Like, if you move before it returns, then it follows you back. Like, it follows you to the new location instead. So it gives you the opportunity to cover a lot more ground. I'm expecting to see a spell like this at some point in the remaster, or with the future content.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I got this. Lightning Dash, that's cool. Like I said before, I'm all down with the electricity.
Yep. See, Lightning Dash was interesting, because I'll briefly talk about Sinclair's Almanac again. We have the Blink Strider, which has been teased, and people have heard about it. During our design phase for like the Blink Striker and the Blink Strider, we were kind of like, is this too far? Like, are we pushing this a little bit too far?
Yeah, and the one thing I will say to that, though, and like, I've, mild spoilers, I have looked into the Blink Strider, I have peeked at it, and I won't spoil anything about the class itself, but I will say, like, because that's an archetype.
Yeah.
So, the thing about an archetype you have to keep in mind is that anytime you do an archetype, any class is going to be able to pick that up.
Oh, yeah.
So you have to be careful about how you limit archetypes. This can go full bore with something like this because it's, like I said, it's a self-contained class. Everything is tied to a very specific class DC with a very specific stat that no other class currently has as their core stat. Yeah. And there's no other way for anyone else who multi-classes into this to get this action at that full DC.
Yeah.
So it can be a bit more risky and a bit more... And, like, the other thing, too, with the elements, they are specialized. They are meant to be hyper-focused. So the space allows that sort of thing, whereas something like the Blink Strider, you got to think about how that's going to function if you put that on a fighter. You got to think about how that functions if you put it on a rogue, or an investigator, or a wizard. Like, I don't know why you would do that, but, like, you have to think about that sort of stuff.
And it is one of the things that we considered, but I just find it interesting that... I think people have been joking about it for a while, since particularly Secret of Magic, where everyone was like, oh, okay, so Pathfinder 2 is going full anime. And I think we've gotten our answer.
I mean, they make it sound like Pathfinder 1E didn't go full anime by the end of it.
Well, it's just, okay, well, like, the 2 impulses for level 18. Crowned in Tempest's Fury.
The level 18 feats are the best thing about this class.
You can't tell, like, you can't tell me that an anime protagonist wouldn't be squaring off against the big boss and be like, I'm going to unleash my new maneuver. Ground in Tempest Fury.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah. You can hear Piccolo screaming, "Infinite expanse of the bluest heaven!" Ah!
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I just fucking love it that they've just gone ride or die with it.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Again, like, and I know, like, this is sort of grokking behind the curtain a bit. I know, like, I follow some of the Paizo guys on Twitter, and like, I know some of them are like massive nerds and like any sort of like all sort of Paizo, huge weebs. Some of them,
absolutely.
So, like, it absolutely makes sense that this is where they went with this, particularly for a class like Kineticist that is very blatantly based on like the most anime-inspired Western cartoon in existence.
But like getting into the other like impulses, particularly for Earth, it's where you start to see like the differences in the elements starting to come out.
I love Earth so much. Like, I was watching the because I'm in withdrawal and don't have a PS5. I was watching like I was watching some Final Fantasy 16 footage. Yeah. And like I was seeing like the fight with Titan in that game. Yeah. I won't spoil anything for people who haven't played it yet, but like that fight gets ridiculous. Oh no. Like, absolutely. It is stupid. Like, the fights in that game are absolutely like the most Final Fantasy thing you can imagine. But like the Titan fight is literally just like I did that, and then like I watched it, and like very soon after, like the day or two after I did, the Kineticist came out, and then I was looking at the Earth Elemental, and it's like the Earth Kineticist. I'm just like, I can make Titan with this. Yeah, I can literally get like a suit of rock armor.
I saw the Sand Snatcher one, and I thought that's creepy as hell, but okay.
Yeah, that one's a bit weird, but like things like Tremor, for instance.
Tremor's nice. I just like Tremor.
Yeah, it's Stepping Stones is great too. Like, Stepping Stones is the exact kind of like nice utility I expect from an Earthbender. Yeah. Like, it's not sexy, but it's gonna do the job, and that's what you want from that.
Like, Spike Skin is exactly what we're expecting.
Yeah. Weight of Stone. Spike Skin. Swim through Earth.
No, here it is. Rebirth in Living Stone.
Yeah.
And the Shattered Mountain weeps.
Yeah, like, I retweeted that one. Well, not retweeted. I screen capped that one and put it on Twitter saying, the Shattered Mountain weeps, and said, "This is what I'm saying now instead of rocks fall and everyone dies." Yeah. I can't claim credit for that. That was one of my players who said that. I showed him that feed because I'm just like, look at how ridiculous these feeds get, and he's just like, that this is the new rocks fall, everyone dies, and I'm like, yoink. Yeah.
The Shattered Mountain weeps. What? You're all dead now. Aww.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Rebirth in Living Stone. That's your Earth Elemental.
Yeah, like, that's
rebirth yourself as an Earth Elemental. It's just like, yeah, let's do this.
Yeah.
Fire is exactly what you would expect.
Like, I love the fire kinesis so much. I'm going to say this about a lot of it. Like, pleasantly surprised. Earth, I love it. Fire, I love it. I just really love it.
I just think it's neat.
Yeah, basically. There's so much good stuff here, though. And, like, it's one of those things where it's like, it feels almost like an overabundance of AoE in some ways, but, like, that's the only bad thing I can say about it. Like, it does kind of get a bit ridiculous. Like, you have, like, a good, like, handful of AoEs that, particularly as you get higher level, like, some of the lower level ones are going to definitely fall off. But then you got stuff like Burning Jet, which is basically the fire bending, like, I use my fire from my hands to jet around the place. Yeah. Again, exactly what I want from this. Like, no complaints.
There's a reason, like, there's a feed up in the class feeds, and we kind of skimmed over it, but it was, you can basically nominate an amount of people equal to your Constitution modifier that don't get caught in your AoEs.
Yeah, basically.
Because, it gets pretty nutty.
Firejet, you mean Ozai Fly? Yeah, basically.
Yeah, absolutely. Like stride leaping 60 feet. Whew. Volcanic Escape.
Yeah, Volcanic Escape is good. That's the exact kind of like reaction that I want to get from something like that. Yeah.
All Shell End in Flames.
Yeah, All Shell End in Flames and Ignite the Sun are just. Yeah.
What?
Well, I just love all shall end in flames. It's just literally the screw you, I'm taking you with me ability.
Yeah.
And then like you come back, it's like I lied. I'm still okay, guys. You just you all died, and I'm still here.
There's an old game, The World Ends With You, and it's a JRPG.
I know that one. Yeah.
You know that one?
I haven't played it, but I know it well. Yeah.
There's a pin from that, and I really wish they had have named All Shall End in Flames in that. And the pin's called Fire Pyre All Expire.
Yep.
It's
yep.
just like
that's all you need.
Ah.
Just a nice solid naming convention.
But at the same point, it's a lot to live up to.
Yeah. But yeah, look, fire is exactly what it needs to be. Like, I don't know what else you want. Like, all the bells and whistles too, like the ones that give you like your thermal nimbus, that give you your resistances. There's one which is like Kindle Flame, which I think gives your allies a buff as well too. Like, those are nice little bells and whistles too. But like, really, you're going to be picking this to just go full pyro.
Yeah.
And that's all you want from it, and that's what it does. Like, again, I don't know what more you could want from this.
Like, if you don't pick up the thing that like takes people out of your AoEs, you're absolutely going to be having the fighter reconsidering their frontline options.
Yeah, you are absolutely that player. You are absolutely just going to be like... I mean, you know someone's going to play a Goblin Pyromancer that does exactly that.
Oh, absolutely. Like, I can see it now. The Goblin Pyromancer who's like, yeah, they thought I was a sorcerer. It didn't work out too well.
Yeah, basically. And he doesn't pick up the AoE, like, the thing that keeps his ally safe in AoE, and they're like, why didn't you pick up that feat? And he's like, what feat?
That was a feat? That was an option? I just went to all the fire impulses and picked them as a win.
Yeah, basically.
Man.
Yeah. Like
the metal ones.
Yeah. So metal, I will say, metal is probably the one that I don't want to say is like the most disappointing, because I still really like it. It's definitely one. Yeah, it's definitely janky. Not in a bad way, but it's definitely like one of the least straightforward in many ways.
Like it's
kind of got a bit of it's got a bit of defense, it's got a bit of blasting. It's like, yeah, I will say I do love Magnetic Field. Magnetic Field is a very good aura.
It is, but it's also one of those ones where it's like it has to be for the right campaign.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you're absolutely right. Like, in the end, if you're in a wilderness campaign, you're not going to be seeing much metal armor, so you want to avoid it. But like for any other campaign, you know, most creatures, you're going to be coming across creatures that have armor. So, yeah.
There's also a lot of architect type stuff as well. I noticed, like with Scrap Barricade.
Yeah, that's true. Actually, that's a fair point. One of the big things I do notice with this is that there was like a lot of crafty type stuff, like Flash Forge and Scrap Barricade.
Yeah. So I definitely get the feeling with the Metal Kineticist in particular, it's battlefield control.
Yeah, that's probably a good way to put it. It's almost like a pseudo-tanky battlefield control, and it does have some solid AoE as well, because it's got like a lot of those like shoot lots of metal spikes at creatures' abilities. Yeah. It's definitely, I think, the most, like, individually, it's got, like, the most spread focus in many ways.
Yeah. But it's also the kind of thing where, like, for instance, Metal Carapace.
Yeah.
And you start getting the whole thing of, oh, okay, so this is for the ones who want to be, like, the frontline kineticist.
Exactly. And I will say, too, like, I feel that this is a very good one to, if you're doing dual gate.
Yeah.
Yeah, like, this is one where, like, if you're, like, going Earth, for instance, and you don't want to pick up particular Earth feats, you can go, well, I'm just going to go Metal instead, and then I can pick up some things that give me some extra, like, consume power if I want to, like, get some extra resistance to common energy types.
Yeah.
Or, you know, Scrap Barricade, so I can use that with my other Barricade ability, like with my Stone Wall ability. Hey, dude, wait, what's... Hey, bro, I heard you like walls, so I built you a wall on your wall.
I actually have a player who loves fucking around with walls and spells that do wall effects, and it's like, well, you're going to be eating well soon.
Yeah, exactly. Hell of a Million Needles. Sorry, Hell of a Million Needles. Definitely up there with the peak of the level 18 feat names.
Like, wow. And it's been one of the ones that's been very popular for people being like, oh, but Cactuar. It's like, yeah, no, I know.
Yeah, it really it feels like that's a Final Fantasy shout out because like it's 1,000 needles for Cactuar, I think, but yeah, like
Yeah.
same diff.
Wretch Rust was one of the ones that I thought was a little bit.
It's niche. It's definitely niche.
It's not just the way it's described as well. You exhale tendrils formed from flakes of rusted metal.
Yeah, why don't you just exhale the rusted metal?
It's like, that's, yeah. Like, people are gonna look at that and be like, oh, okay, so that's creepy as hell.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that's the point. Maybe it is. It's like, oh, they're tendrils. That's kind of, violating. Yeah, but yeah, it's very yeah, like the metal kineticist I think is definitely like I said, I don't hate it, but it's like it's janky.
Yeah.
It's janky. I think it's one of those ones that like it's definitely got not necessarily a lack of focus, but it's definitely the most broad focus.
Yeah. No, I agree with that.
And I think like that can make it like probably a little bit too weird to sort of maybe stick to as a pure single gate kineticist. Maybe not. Like I'm sure it'll work perfectly fine, but I do definitely feel like it's this one is very much made to be used with other elements. And
there is a tendency to have those kind of designs as well, where they will have something that is designed to be done with other things.
Yeah.
In particular, one of the things that I noticed a lot with the metal impulses was there's not a lot of extra energy damages and stuff like that. Like, there's a couple, like Conductor Sphere and stuff like that, but for the most part, a lot of it is just, slashing damage, bludgeoning damage, piercing damage. So if you're trying to play a kineticist that's a little bit more grounded, like I would play a metal kineticist in Agents of Edgewatch, for instance.
Yeah, 100%. Oh yeah, like that would be perfect. That's like the what do you call it? The metal bending police from Korra.
Yeah, like absolutely. Of the 5 elements, metal represents construction and entropy. Absolutely.
That makes sense. I will admit too, I will say too, just want to throw that out there. Really, interesting how they've decided to add the Eastern elements. But the thing about it is that I'm not as familiar with those conceptually compared to obviously the 4 Western elements. Yeah. So it's definitely one of those ones that I think I very much appreciate, and it does sort of it does add a lot of that sort of wider understanding of the sort of these concepts that isn't just completely Eurocentric. Yeah.
And it kind of speaks to the breadth of writers that they have at their disposal.
Yeah.
I don't want to butcher their name, but they're on the front cover. What page are on? 33.
I know what you're saying, yeah.
Sen HHS. I don't know what her ethnicity is, but I know that she is kind of from the Asian world and stuff like that. Yeah. God, I feel terrible saying this, but they actually did reach out to people and writers who were from that areas who knew the source material that they were working with.
Yeah, I think I've seen Sen on Twitter because I'm pretty sure I've seen them with Jess, who I also follow on Twitter.
Yeah, I think we all do.
If you're involved, you know anything about follow any of the Paizo people, you've probably seen Jess. But but I think I've seen Sen as well. Water impulses.
This is a healer.
Actually, no. Wood is the healer, but there's definitely healing in water.
Yeah.
So, water is interesting. I will say, water's one of those elements that can be sort of a little dull sometimes.
Yeah.
I think, especially offensively, it very much relies a lot on, a lot of, the knockarounds, things like that, and a lot of cold damage. One complaint I would have about this is that it doesn't have enough cold damage, in my opinion. You can't really make a Cryomancer type build with it. Not an effective one, anyway.
No.
But, I mean, in the end, water is more than cold, so that makes sense.
Yes.
The water impulses, it's definitely a very sort of, area-controlled mixed with, it almost feels like a very support-oriented one, compared to some of the previous compared to some of the previous elements.
Because you have things like, where was it? Torrent in the Blood. A healing wave splashes across creatures in a 30-foot cone. It's cleansing water driving inflictions from the body. Each creature in the area regains 3d8 hit points and can attempt a new save against one poison or disease infliction affecting it. Like, it's a healing spell.
It really is. Yeah, and each of them are sort of balanced around the fact that you can only use them once each, so per combat. Effectively per combat. And a lot of like the other ones are like bludgeoning damage that like does things like, you know, driving rain. It conceals creatures. It's an obscuring mist effect. Yeah. Tidal Hands. That's a knockback. That's a knockback.
Oh, yeah.
Winter's Clutch. What is that? Is that rain? Speed reduction? Oh no, difficult terrain.
Yeah, which is something I feel. Yeah,
which is me. I love a good difficult terrain. Difficult terrain is one of my soapboxes you'll probably hear one day is how under terrain people are too hesitant to use difficult terrain, but that's a
Return to the Sea I thought was interesting.
You adapt a creature to living and moving in water. For 10 minutes it gains. Oh yeah, so it's like feet to fins.
Yeah. It's.
Yeah, Durak. Once per combat, you mean you aren't hitting everyone 100 rounds per in combat? Real talk. A few months ago, I did a combat against a creature where the combat became like the dice were just rolling so badly, like it actually lasted the full length of a upcast rank 4 invisibility spell.
Oh God!
So it literally went 10 rounds, and I was like, the spell literally runs out. Like.
Yeah.
You guys basically, like, you guys didn't kill it, but, like, you survived long enough, so now it's revealed again. It was a very tedious fight. I felt really bad for my players.
No, I've had fights like that.
Yeah.
Cold Hurricane, and we start getting our rover control stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. So, water is definitely, like, it definitely strikes me as, like, I will say, it's probably, I don't want to say it's the weakest element, because all the elements are good, but it's definitely the least appealing to me, I think.
Yeah.
Because it is such a sort of basic, like, you know, the damage type is basic. It's got healing, but it's also, like, not got a full healing focus, like we'll see with the wood element soon.
Yeah.
You serve the Lunar Rains and Ride the Tsunami. Amazing, you know, continues the amazing feat names.
Absolutely. Like, if my Pirates game gets this high...
Yeah, and I will say, for a water-themed campaign, this element would be amazing. 100%.
Yeah. I don't feel it goes hard enough, honestly.
Yeah, I get what you mean. It's not bad, but it's definitely, like, I think it's probably the weakest as far as, like, fully leaning into the thematics.
Yeah. Like, there's...
But water is, like, one of those elements that can be very hard to sort of do anything fun with. Particularly because, like, you know, wood's got the healing focus alongside it. You know, earth has, like, the bludgeoning damage and knock-around focus as well. You know, there's already a lot of stuff that does exactly what it's doing. It's hard to find a space for that.
It's one of the things, we're probably not going to get time for it, actually, but one of the things I was going to touch on with the water spells is that so many of them you can't actually use underwater.
Yeah, exactly.
And although I'm getting the feeling that all of these could be used underwater, because they don't have things like they don't have the verbal components or stuff like that, but like underwater is a part of the whole thing, like it's a part of the whole shtick. And to kind of ignore that, it feels like a missed opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, I get underwater is a bit niche a lot of the time, so they probably don't want to focus too much on it. But at the same time, I feel like they really should. Yeah, like it definitely feels there is a missed opportunity to at least integrate that as like a peripheral effect into some of this.
Well, yes, right, even a sidebar or something like that. But
I don't even think, not even a sidebar, just like have it be like, here's the main effect. By the way, this has a nice little bonus if you use it underwater.
Yes.
It doesn't have to be a big thing, but just something that's sort of like a nice ribbon that makes it all come together. Any waterboarding? Oh no, we're not doing that. This is an Avatar class, not Guantanamo Bay.
Yeah, no. Wood impulses.
Wood impulses. So, wood's a bit of a weird one, but like,
it is.
I don't hate it. I don't hate it. This is definitely the healing spec.
Yeah.
This is definitely the one that's like it's literally got vital, which is the new positive damage as like one of its core focuses. This is very much a. I will say I did grok out a water wood kineticist, which thematically I think is great, but also like. Because, you have a water kineticist who uses the water to grow the plants and all that sort of thing, but it does have a lot of great sort of utility when you combine all that healing together.
Yeah. And that's one of the thing I noticed with the wood impulses is there's very much a strong healing focus. Like, if you're using the free archetype, which I do recommend a lot of people do, especially if it's not your first game, it's like second or third, use free archetype. Like a wood kineticist, that's a multi-class druid.
Yeah.
Like, wow.
It sort of writes itself, yeah.
And it's just kind of cool.
I was gonna say, like the wood impulses are very it's definitely like very healing focused, but you get that sort of nice plant-based like area control, which is kind of what you want from that. So you have things like hail of splinters. It's all very like it's all very like nice. Exactly what you would expect from plant-based abilities. Lots of tangling, lots of spikes.
Timber Sentinel is your protector tree.
Yeah, Timber Sentinel. A lot of people have been like have been sort of singing Timber Sentinel's praises. I don't know if it's like as effective as people think it is. Like, because I will say I've had some players who use Protector Tree before. It's a very good spell, but like you need to make sure it's used in the right circumstances because it is a limited range.
It is very much a limited range.
You want to make sure it is within like the area that like within like a vital area or as close as possible to things like if you got like your champion frontlining or something like that, you want that to be protecting them.
Yeah.
So it's a very effective spell when used properly. I don't know, like the big thing people are saying, well, the first thing people are saying is, well, technically you can just create as many trees as you want now, and that's an abuse. And it's like, I'm not gonna
Okay. The base kinesis for wood allows you to do that anyway, so go on with your bad self.
Well, yeah, and that's it. And it's like, as GM, I'm just going to be like, no, it crumbles. Like, you're not making a forest here. But, like, I'm not, like, yeah, like, I get it. Like, there's technically an abuse rule, but also, like, who's actually going to allow that? But the other thing, too, is, like, a lot of people are like, oh, it's so potent because you can just recast it. And it's like, sure, but it's 2 actions.
Yeah.
Like, it's 2 actions, and then, like, you're doing, like, I mean, yeah, sure, the spell itself is 2 actions as well, but...
Like, how many times are you going to do it per day? Like, for real.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Like, at least the spell, like, makes you think about it before you cast it.
Yes.
I'm the Lorax, I speak for the trees. My downtime activities to create a forest and tend to my children.
I mean, we all know there's going to be leshies coming out of the woodworks, pun intended, that are just wood kineticists.
That's oh, Jesus.
We knew it was going to happen. I have been surprised with the lack of puns tonight.
Yep. Anyway, Wooden Palisade. It's another wall spell. That's great.
Well, it is the theme that I'm seeing a lot with the kineticist in general. It's very much either AoE or battlefield control.
Yeah, which is good.
You can argue that AoE is also battlefield control.
I love battlefield control. Like to me, that is like the heart and soul of these games. Like too many people sort of like anyone who looks at a spell like Obscuring Mist and says this spell's mediocre. Like you have again. Yeah, here's the spice. You have know what you're talking about.
Skill issue. What?
Yeah, exactly. Sanguiviolent Roots, by the way, that's metal.
Yeah. Like, we're just gonna pierce people and then drain them, and then heal others. Like, this is fine. Yeah. It's fine.
Yeah, I will say, the 18th level feats for these ones, definitely the weakest names.
Yeah.
They're still badass, but rouse the forest fury, sort of like, let me just call Treebeard and wake him up. Oh, hello! On my way! I'll
Turn
be
the
there
Wheel
in
of
10
Seasons.
years.
Turn the Wheel of Seasons is interesting.
It's an interesting mechanic. This is one of those ones that I feel is cool thematically. I don't know if it's that useful. There's a cleric focus spell that has a very, I can't remember what it is off the top of my head, but it's like the lunar one that goes through like the lunar cycles. That's very similar. Very cool concepts thematically, but I think it's probably a bit too niche for most situations.
Yeah. And also, Turn the Wheel of Seasons just wouldn't work in Australia, would it?
No, well, we have, I mean, you use it in Melbourne and it would go through and like turn the Wheel of Seasons. Oh my god, everything changed in like 10 seconds.
Well, we now understand why Melbourne does what it does.
Yeah, exactly. Someone is constantly casting that impulse on it.
It's cricket and footy seasons, pretty much. Now, composite impulses.
Now, this... So, the composite impulses...
Yes?
Yeah, look. They are interesting ideas. I don't know. Like, I'm gonna really struggle to I'm really gonna really struggle to defend these because like they're not bad.
No,
they're not bad, but like you're investing a lot to get some very niche abilities.
Yeah.
That a lot of it isn't going to cover. Like I've heard some things like people look at Ambush Bladder Ward and they're kind of like, yeah, this one is kind of creepy. And I'm pretty sure Michael Sayer himself was the one that came out and said, oh yeah, I was having a day when I read that one.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
like,
yeah, honestly, these ones I feel these ones are like, this is probably the biggest missed opportunity here. And I get that, like, this is probably a bit of an afterthought because really, like, you don't need to have the composite feats to make them. You don't need them to make them work, but
it's an interesting design space. I'm looking forward to how it is expanded in the future, if it is expanded.
Yeah, that's it. This is definitely like, it feels like this is a bit of an afterthought in a lot of these ones. Like, none of these ones have, like, really stood out to me and gone, oh yeah, like, this is definitely worth getting for the dual gates.
That's the key. That's the key for me there. It's like, the composite impulses have to make it worth it to go dual.
And I think in many ways, too, like, I love the idea of, like, having thematics for each of the dual kineticists. Yeah. The dual gates, because, like, I love that sort of, like, I sort of always compare it to Ravnica from MTG. Like, I love the idea when you have, like a set of options that are sort of like each have got their own identity, and then you like mush them together and say, what does this look like? So the one that stands out to me most is actually Steam Knight, which is the water and fire one and level 6. Because that to me is a very cool idea. That's probably the one that really stands out to me as like, this is something interesting and unique. But like, it's also like a basis for something more that doesn't get extrapolated on. Yeah. And I get, like, and like, this is not a knock to Paizo, because this class has got so much already. It doesn't need any more. Like, it doesn't need any more at the moment. Like, but it is absolutely the sort of thing where, like, if you really want to flesh this out, you could. Oh, Lightning Rod's here too. Yeah. Actually, I take that back. Lightning Rod's great. I love Lightning Rod.
And Lightning Rod's the one, you smash Metal Rod into your foe and call lightning to it. Yeah.
Yeah, that one is bad. Sorry, I thought that was metal for some reason. But yeah, that one's amazing. I love it. Because it is, like I said, lightning's my jam, so.
Takes 1d12 electricity with basic. Okay, yeah, alright.
It's cool. I dig that one. I dig that one a lot. Yeah, like I said, I thought that one was metal, so like I didn't even think about that when we went through the metal kineticist. I was like, oh yeah, where is that? Yeah. But yeah. So that and Steam Knight are like the two standouts for me with this one.
And they end at level 6 by the looks of it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because then we get into elemental allies.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, there is one thing I wanted to discuss with you before we close it out, because we are almost out of time. We didn't even get to touch the spells or anything like that.
I know.
So
will we have to do a part 2?
We might have to do a part 2. I was hoping to cover most of what I wanted to in one, but no, I think we're gonna have to do a part 2.
Yeah.
Considering what we're seeing with the kineticist.
Yeah.
Like, particularly for all of these feats,
Yeah.
where it's like level +5.
Yep.
So the remaster classes, yeah?
Mm-hmm.
This is something I mentioned in the Hijinks Discord, actually.
Yeah.
Bard. Strip away the casting.
Mm-hmm.
And give them feats like this.
Mm.
Like, of course, themed around, like, the whole bardic idea and stuff like that. But have it tied to feats instead of things like focus spell and composition spells.
Mm.
What do you think about that? Because this opens up, like, having feats with level barriers opens up some very interesting ideas.
Yeah. I mean, look. Well, for starters, I'm going to assume we're not going to see that with Bard, because I'm assuming the Bard's going to keep most of its identity as an occult caster and not scrap away composition cantrips.
But you could see right? Instead of Inspire Courage being a composition cantrip, have it as a level 1 feat.
Yeah, on one hand, I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
I think the thing to keep in mind with all of this is that the whole reason this works with Kineticist is because, like I said, this is already like a pseudo-caster that functions more like a martial.
Yes.
So, really, like, the thing is, like, it kind of needs a lot of the those caster stipulations, like heightening, for example, like the heightening addendums, because, like, it's functioning as a spellcaster in many ways, even though it isn't a full spellcaster.
Yeah.
But in many ways, I think for a lot of classes, that kind of stuff would be redundant. Like, you won't get a lot of that with martials, for instance, because a lot of martial scaling just naturally happens by virtue of their built-in scaling through weapons and skills and all that sort of thing.
Well, one of the ones that I think we might see this, I would like to see it with Bard, and I definitely get the feeling that if Paizo does it, I might do some Bard feats up that kind of use the same mechanics. But Ranger, because their wards, like the Warden spells, have been an interesting space for a very long time.
Yeah, we did have an interesting talk with the project manager on on Sinclair's about that one a while ago.
Yeah,
while we're talking about some stuff related to that.
Because the focus spell casting that's on the Ranger, I guess it makes sense, but if you could have stuff like this, like the Kinesis impulses and stuff like that, instead, I think it would put the Ranger in a better spot.
Yeah.
Like, you wouldn't have to worry about the focus spells or anything like that, and it would be more directly tied to the class DC as opposed to this spell DC.
Well, that's the thing I was going to say. Like, the thing with the focus spells at the moment is that they can overtly be classed as spells, and with focus spells, particularly with the focus point changes, that all synergizes together if you have other options that grant you focus spells. The main benefit of that would be, like, thinking about how that works with class DC.
Yes.
And there's definitely, like, a bit of a weird precedent here with Kineticist, because it is the first class that uses class DC to... Well, first, it's the first class that gets legendary in its class DC.
Yeah.
But it's also the one that has the biggest focus on its class DC. But that's also a little bit because it is that pseudo-caster that gets... Like, all the Kineticist... All the progression for its class DC is basically one-on-one with spellcasting progression. Like, full progression spellcasting. Yeah. Like, they get their expert at level 7, their master at level 15, legendary at level 19. The only thing it breaks is the fact that there is a way to get bonuses to attack rolls.
Yeah.
But
we haven't even got into that.
No, we haven't, and that's a discussion unto itself. But I think the thing for this is, like, the question is, like, if you have a class like Ranger, for instance, that has class DC as one of its main sort of focus, as its main focus, but then it's got, like, that spellcasting element through Warden spells. Yeah. And even things like, I have a good friend who plays a Magus in Pathfinder Society, and it really annoys him that the Magus doesn't get a class DC. It only gets spellcasting DC. So it gets this really gimped DC that doesn't tie to its key ability score.
Yeah.
So there's things like that I completely get. I think... Sorry, just taking a sip of a drink so I can lubricate my throat. But, it's definitely one of those things that, like, this is the hard balance. This is the hard thing to balance between making a functional character while also maintaining sort of mechanical diversity and verisimilitude with the game. Because like you kind of want spellcasting to be its own thing. You kind of want spells to be spells to key in to a stat that's specific to spells. It is a bit of a disconnect if it's like, well, I'm playing a ranger whose key ability score is dexterity. That has nothing to do with spellcasting. Like, what does my dexterity have to do with that? So like, there is a bit of a disconnect there. Like, and it is a purely thematic one. Yeah. Like, I think in many ways this is kind of like the downside of sticking to the ability scores as like the basis from which everything else is built from.
Yes.
Pathfinder I think if they are ever to do like a full, 3rd edition whatever, I think in many ways we have progressed so far past the need for base ability scores to be the basis. Sorry, for those ability scores to be the basis of everything.
Yeah.
That we don't actually need that, particularly with the proficiency system.
No.
So you can individually have. Yeah, so you can have those proficiencies tied to it and have them scale much closely. So then you can have those things like you can have your Magus that has both a independent attack progression and spellcasting progression, and it doesn't either clash or one brings the other down, and you don't have to worry about it, sort of invalidating other classes that get legendary proficiencies, for instance. So I think in many ways, this is just kind of a natural result of all of that still being based around those key ability scores, which has more to do with the thematics than it does any sort of mechanical virtue in a vacuum.
Oh yeah, and like there's discussions that go around, particularly with the barbarian, regarding their key ability scores, and it's like, okay, I see how it is.
And also, like, with Barbarian, like, because it's, like, even in, like, the new Elemental one, for instance, like, they get the level 6 ability, which is a huge Elemental Blast, and, like, you think, oh, that's a cool, like, magical ability. It's tied to its key ability score, which is Strength. Yeah. So, you could justify that in the Barbarian's case by saying, well, it's about their, their strength is their body, and, they're just channeling through their body, which, like, I can get, but also, like,
we also understand you're reaching.
It's a stretch.
Yeah,
it's a stretch, and it doesn't line up nicely compared to something like Ranger, which has its own independent spellcasting ability. So there's a lot to unpack there.
Well, I particularly brought up the Bard and the Ranger because one, they're coming in the remaster. I think the Bard's coming in Player Core 2. I think for the Bard.
Oh, I thought Bard was Player Core 1. Let me just check. I've got the thing still open here. Yeah, Bard's in Player Core 1, so we're getting Bard and Ranger.
Okay. So we'll see how that goes, but we're also supposed to be getting another 2 classes. Like, the playtests for them are supposed to be coming out next month, I think.
Yeah, like, I was going to say, like, if it wasn't for the Starfinder, like, release, or reveal, I think I would have been very disappointed that they didn't reveal anything about them at the, during Gen Con.
Yeah. Like, we were kind of, are they going to, like, is it going to be a last-minute reveal for Gen Con? And no, by the looks of it, they're going to let them have their own little fire and thunder.
Yeah. I am very curious to see, because they've said they're new classes. Yeah. And they've said, like ones that haven't been in first edition, so that's going to be interesting to see. And one of them is going to be rare. So, like, rare doesn't obviously mean more powerful, but it means it's going to be weird, or, like, very specific.
Well, wasn't, if I remember it, Gunslinger was rare?
Gunslinger and Inventor are both uncommon.
Okay.
Like, they're both uncommon, because the idea is, like, if they're not, yeah, and that's just it, like, Gunslinger and Inventor are just uncommon. So, like, what makes a class so out there that it's classified as rare? Like, are we gonna get, like, are we gonna get a Starfinder class?
Well...
Are we gonna, like, pre-get a Starfinder class?
Well... So if it's things that we
I don't
have
actually
not
think
seen...
that, by the way, but
if it's stuff that we haven't seen in Pathfinder 1 before, like we haven't seen in Pathfinder before, so it's that instantly takes out the Inquisitor and the Shifter, which
I'm very upset about because I really want those classes.
There was a lot of people who were like, "Does Shifter, please?"
Shifter is a class I definitely think needs to be added at some point because there is not a full Druids get like the and other spellcasters get the shape-shifting fantasy, but not in the way the Shifter allows. I really want that at some point.
No, look, after reading through some of the feats for the Kineticist, I might be writing up some Druid feats to help them out a little bit with Wild Shape and things like that. Because the precedence is now set. But it's...
Exactly.
Like, people have pointed out that in the remaster preview, there's mention of, what was it, Cleric Champion and Herald.
Yeah.
So...
No, Herald, I will say, Herald I think is more, because I saw the thread on, there was a thread on Starstone about that. And okay. I think Herald is, because there is literally a creature type called Herald, which is like the Herald, the god, like the Heralds of the Gods.
Yeah.
So I think that's what it's going to be. I think that's just going to be, I think we're just going to be getting, that's just going to be for like, which makes sense. Like, if they're the Divine Heralds, they're going to be sanctified. So that makes sense.
Oh, no, it makes sense.
Because that's the context
same with Petitioners.
Yeah. But as far as the classes, look, one thing I want to say, I do want another spellcaster. Because I feel that, I do feel like obviously, like, Kineticist is kind of, like, scratch a lot of itches and, like, set some interesting precedents and is going to be a good caster, not caster, for people who don't like the caster design.
Yeah.
But I still think, but again, like I said, the most recent caster was Psychic, and then, like I said before, I adore Psychic. Like, it was the class I looked at and said, okay, we've still got some meat left to explore with the caster design.
Yeah. But
so I really want to see what else they can do with it.
It's... Because I know there's a lot of people who've been like, does this mean we're going to be getting Mythic at some point? And I'm like, well, probably not. But there are a lot of interesting ideas. And the thing I'm curious, and this is bringing it back to the Kineticist.
Yeah.
These two new classes that they're going to be playtesting, are they going to be using similar mechanics? Like, are we going to have another kind of pseudo-caster that has spell-like effects that level up their... like the class level, as opposed to like a spell rank or something like that.
Yeah. I mean, this is something, again, I think we've discussed a few times, but also like I've sort of discussed in general, which is like, what do we, like, a lot of people like talk about like the idea of they want like their specialist fantasy characters that you can't do with the generalist casters. And it's like, how's that going to look in game? Like, how's it going to look when you actually put that down mechanically?
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's not impossible, and I think, like, you know, if Paizo does it and they do it well, then great. I trust that they're going to do justice to them. There's been very few disappointments as far as full class concepts that in second edition so far. But I think but yeah, like, I guess the thing is, like, we're not sort of reaching bloat levels of design yet, because I think the system still has plenty of meat left in it. But I would be curious to see what niches they're going to try and fill, because a lot of them are going to be a combination of thematic niches.
Yeah.
While also sort of seeing what else they can do with certain design space. Because
I know you weren't really there for the initial designs of the Shaman and the Thanatos with the Almanac, but that was one of our big concerns. And it was kind of like, well, we're going to be overlapping themes, but, you know, we're doing something what we feel is pretty unique with them.
Yeah.
I'm just curious if they're going to be... I know Paizo in the past has had this habit of setting a mechanical precedent and then never addressing it or going back to it ever again. Yeah. But I kind of hope they don't do that with the Kineticist. Like, even if it isn't to pseudo magic.
Yeah.
The fact that power attack, for instance, instead of having, like, you know, once you reach this certain level with it you add an extra die. Instead, you could just have, like they have with the air impulse here, at level 10, you gain an extra damage dice. Like,
yeah, like it's definitely something you can reuse, and like I wouldn't be against them reusing it. Like, I definitely don't think that. No. I think my thing though is like what else can we explore thematically that we can't currently have?
Yes.
As far as the base classes, because the thing I always say about this, something I've discussed with you when we talk about like concept designs.
Yeah.
Is this something that has enough meat and justifies being a full class, or would it be better suited to an archetype you can bolt onto an existing class?
Yeah.
And I think that's important. I think that's both the good thing about Pathfinder 2e's design is that it is that modular. You can have that sort of easier sort of like, let's just make an archetype and let it be more general.
Yeah.
But, like, obviously, like, you still want a full class at some point, because classes are fun. Like, just having a full new class to explore is cool. But you also just don't want classes for the sake of classes.
Yeah. Which...
like...
It did start to get that point with Pathfinder 1. We were starting to get classes that existed.
I remember reading the Vigilante, and I'm like, this is just a fighter and a rogue with extra steps.
Yeah, absolutely. And I played Vigilante. It was like, this could have just been a rogue archetype.
Yeah.
And now it is a full archetype.
This meeting could have just been an email.
And there were some classes in Pathfinder 1 that absolutely felt like that.
Yeah.
As much as I know Shifter is beloved in certain circles, it absolutely could have just been a druid archetype.
Yeah.
It would have been the first class they stripped out the magic.
Yeah, and in 2e, it's definitely like, the Wildling Druid is definitely, has that as like a focus spell. So like, that's already there as an option. But, yeah, I feel with 2e, like, one thing I will say too, because as much as I love the marshals in 2e, like, I feel we're getting to a point, too, where, like, I'm glad Kineticist has really, like, broken a lot of the trends. Because as much as, like, Thaumaturge is one of the most beloved classes in the game, it definitely felt like by that point, it was kind of, like, getting to, oh, it's just another marshal.
Yeah.
Like, again, like, I know, and I will admit, like, I think I'm not as enamored with the Thaumaturge as a lot of other people are.
Neither.
But I know it's extremely popular. But at the same time, like, we have that. We already had, like, Inventor was sort of already that way before that in Guns and Gears. And again, I love the Inventor, but it was already, like, this is another Marshal, but with X concept on it.
Don't get me started on the Inventor.
Yeah. Like,
we
again,
could go on.
Yeah. But that's kind of what I want to make sure it avoids. Like, I don't want just another Marshal. Like, Kineticist has actually brought something to the table as a class concept. I want to see that continue with any future classes. And I get, Paizo are not infallible. There's not a guarantee every single class they release will be an absolute banger. But, like...
They have a better track record than most.
They have a better track record than, like... they have a better track record than most people who think, like, oh, this is fleshed out enough for... Yeah, I'm going to make this class that's, like... I'm just thinking of, like, the Knight from 3.5 now, which is, like, this is just a fighter, but with, like, extra steps.
Yeah. Which...
And then, but people will legitimately do that and, like, make third-party homebrew with that sort of thing. And it's like, what is this actually bringing to the game?
Ninzad's mentioned Spell Trickster as a expanded, or a full class as a Spell Trickster.
Yeah. I mean, I will say, like, Spell Trickster is one of those things that I simultaneously think was an incredibly missed opportunity to make a baseline thing. But I also get why they didn't.
Yeah. Spell Trickster is one of my go-to archetypes whenever I play a caster of any kind. But
it's great... Yeah.
It's a bit much for new players, and I get that. And altering existing spells is also something interesting.
Yeah.
I wrote an archetype ages ago. Calls the Electric Archon. And the whole idea about that was, we're just going to take Electric Arc and just give it a bunch of different effects as feats. And
was this a joke? Was this a joke class?
It was a joke archetype. I was like, if you love Electric Arc so much, here is an archetype that's built around it. Have fun. But yeah, I don't know what we're gonna see with the 2 new playtest classes.
Yeah, I mean, in the end, I think there's definitely gonna be there's only so much we can do before it before we kind of the speculation becomes a bit sort of self-indulgent.
Yeah, and
so I wouldn't worry about it too much, to be honest. But yeah, it's how do I say it? Yeah, it's. I'm curious. I'm optimistic. I'm cautiously optimistic about them doing something interesting, particularly with the rare class. But I want to be pleasantly surprised. I want to look at it and go, yes, this is something the game can absolutely use, and not just sort of look at it and go, this is just going to be like filling a niche that's, not oversaturated, but like is kind of just too niche to be a full class.
Yeah, like this could have been an archetype. Once again, look. Yeah, I'm kind of with you at this point. I think we're just gonna have to wait and see.
Yeah, because they literally did not drop any hints.
No,
apart
not
from
at all.
Apart from the rarity, like one of them being a rare. Like that's literally all they said. Like it's actually infuriating to a degree.
Like, are they going to do like a dragon tamer class? Are they going to do it? I saw that one.
They're not going to do that because Mark Seifter's going to come along and like stab them for like stepping on the toes of the Eldamon trainer.
Which I do have to look at the beta for that one. I really do.
Yeah.
That said, we should bring this all to a wrap. Thank you, Dan, for joining us. I think I might have to drag you back onto stream again sometime.
Yeah, thank you. I had a lot of fun tonight, so I very much appreciate this.
No, it's all good. I mean, this is the kind of thing I do want to do more often on stream. I do want to bring people on. I want to bring you back because we're gonna probably have to finish off Rage of Elements now.
Oh yeah, we're gonna have to look at everything else. And like, I don't know, maybe we should wait. Maybe we should wait till the playtest comes out and do it then.
Well, what? It's a couple of weeks away. We'll see.
It's a couple of weeks. Look,
we'll make
I'm a
some
busy
plans.
man. I'm a busy man. I can wait that long.
Yeah. Look, we both have plenty of stuff going on at the moment. Like exactly. I have a stream in the morning.
Yeah, and I have a day job. I woke up at 3 o'clock this morning and I am running on fumes.
Oh God. Well, I will let you go. I'll just do the little outro for the stream and we'll find someone to raid. But once again, thank you for joining us, Dan.
Yep, and thank you.
Everyone, go check him out on Blue Sky and Twitter. I will do the little command thing where you can see all of his writings and musings. As much as people enjoy the spicy takes that he tends to drop from time to time, there's also just a lot of solid content there. Like some of the musings on design is the reasons why we pulled him in for Sinclair's library. And... I also just
retweet a lot of Final Fantasy XIV memes.
Yeah.
Like a lot of gaming memes. Like it's just. I do it for my own reference. I do it so I can scroll through my own feed and go, oh yeah, I like that. That was fun.
That was funny. That was good.
Exactly.
Otherwise, also check out Imaginary Adventures.
Yes, check out. Right? Check out. Go say hi to Damien. He is the guy who runs the store I do my Pathfinder Society games at. It is a very nice community. If you are in the Brisbane area, particularly on the south side, please hit them up if you're interested in some Pathfinder Society games.
And I do highly recommend Pathfinder Society. I know GMs may vary, but I've been in Pathfinder Society for a month now. I'm 4th level of a wizard, so it's been actually a fair while now. But I've enjoyed the experience. But more importantly, if you use code Obscura Tabletop, when you check out, you get 15% off your first purchase. And with all the remaster books that are on the way, that's going to be a hefty discount. I'm actually surprised he let us do 15%.
He's very good, Damien. He's very good.
Every conversation I've had with him has been an absolute joy. And he loves the Pathfinder community ever so much.
He really does. He's been very good, and he like I have these sorts of conversations with him all the time. Like he thinks about the sort of stuff as much as we do.
Yeah.
It's very well informed, and he is trying to create, like I will say, like he is trying to create like a very good community of players in the Pathfinder Society area that we have at the moment. So it's been fun.
Now, raid. We might raid Meeples and Dragons again, because I think we raided them last night, but they're playing Baldur's Gate 3 tonight. Otherwise, I hope everyone had a fun time tonight. Be sure to check me out on the socials as well. We will be back here tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. for Let's Build a Super Dungeon, which, thank you for everyone who's made it as popular as it has been. I didn't expect it to be as popular as it is. But people seem to be enjoying it. It has a lot of traction on YouTube. Speaking of, for everyone who is watching this on YouTube later on, thank you very much. We'll also be back here at 5:30 Australian Eastern Standard Time for Hoist the Colours on Saturday, and then 7 p.m. for Abomination Vaults. But we're gonna raid Meeples and Dragons. Tell them I said hi. Otherwise, I hope you have a good day, a good night, a good week, no matter where you are in the world. And as always, remember, we are the storytellers. Good night, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.